Welcome to the Shasta County Arts Council in Old City Hall. My name is Nancy Hill, and we're the facilitators for this wonderful conversation we're about to participate in. Welcome to the community if you're new to the Reading area. And we're so excited to be able to host this event. There is an agenda. If you didn't get one, Michaela can get you an agenda. It has what our activities are for the day, and it also has contact information for our presenters as well. I wanted to just briefly introduce some people. First of all, Tracy Huddick right here. She is our California for the Arts representative for this event today. Eliza Tudor from Nevada County Arts Council. She's a board member for the Californians for the Arts and the Arts Advocacy. She's also our lead agent representative for our Creative Corps, our California Creative Corps, which we're really excited to hear about. And then I'm not sure Courtney is here. Do we see Courtney? Courtney Farrell is our project manager for SURF. I hope she's able to attend. I have not seen her come in. Eliza brought Katrina and Gianna with her today from the Nevada County Arts Council. They'll be popping in there. There's Gianna right there, and Katrina popping in and out as well. I wanted to also recognize one of our Shasta County Arts Council board members, Carlo Henry, sitting there, who's here today. We're excited to have Carlo here to represent. And then our staff members running around. Thank you to our staff for helping facilitate this wonderful event. Yes, Dar? Yeah, come on closer. I love it. Thank you, Eliza. So get closer. I know you may still be a little shy with COVID, but we're very excited to be live and in person. As you also can see, we're going to have a little bit of technology going on with our Zoom meeting too, so it's pretty exciting to see that as well. Yeah, I know. No front row Joes, huh? All right, so without further ado, I'm going to start by turning this over to Tracy. Thank you so much.
Hi, everyone. I have the biggest laptop in laptopdom. Sorry about that blocking. I'll try to go over here. First of all, I'm Tracy Hudak with Californians for the Arts. I'm the manager of programs and organizational advancement for Southern California. In just a moment, I'm going to turn you over to your Northern California manager. She couldn't be here today, so I'm happy to represent her team, and they will all be Zooming in. And on behalf of our CEO, Julie Baker, and the team, we'd like to express our gratitude to our partners and to all of you, those who made it possible and you who are making it real, because this is only our second ever in-person regional conversation. We've been conducting these via Zoom since COVID. And yesterday we had one in Eureka, and you are our second one. And we're very, very grateful that you're here, and can't thank Nancy enough and the team at Shasta County Arts Council for their can-do spirit. Like, yes, let's make this happen. And of course, Eliza for bringing the California Creative Tour listening tour here to you today. So you'll be hearing from her later as well. And would also like to thank Nathan and Daniel for dialing us in and bridging the Zoom and the physical worlds. Please be patient with us if there's some glitches. We're all working out this new space, this new hybrid space, so I appreciate your patience. So to kick off our program, I'd like to introduce Kara Q. Smith. She's the manager of programs and organizational advancement for Northern California, and she'll introduce our program to you. Thank you. Oh, yes. Will you do it on the mic?
Oh, sure. Yes. Welcome to our fourth iteration of regional conversations, which are taking...
Give me a second, darling. We want to acknowledge our Shasta, Wintu, Yahi, and Yana peoples. We also have Pitt River here today as well. And we acknowledge our indigenous people in our community. Thank you so much.
Thank you for that. And yes, hello again. And we're just so glad you're here. As I mentioned, this is our fourth iteration of regional conversations. We've been rolling them out over the last 2 weeks, and this is our second in person. So we're really glad to be here and to be able to support this hybrid environment so our team can be here. As Tracy said, my name is Kara, and I am the manager of programs and organizational advancement for Northern California. So whenever you have questions about services, partnerships, programs, membership, I'm your go-to person there, and you'll receive all of our contact information through this program.
Kara.
If you don't have my contact information already, I can't see the room, but I hope I know.
I know. I'm sorry. I'm sorry to interrupt you.
So I'm just kind of guessing. I'm joining you today from the
Hold on, Kara. I'm sorry. Just to interrupt. We're having an issue with the view of the Zoom where we can't see the speaker. We can't see you all speaking. I'm not sure what the solution. Nathan, do you have a recommendation? Does he need to switch it to speaker view? Eduardo, if you could try speaker view, and we have to be able to hear them, so if you could turn them up. Beautiful. We were sorry, just a second. Okay. Go ahead. Yeah. So, sorry guys, there's still a speaker view issue. I think we need to be able to hear them, so if we could bear with some of the feedback just for enough backup. I need your advice, guys. They have to do it on their end. Eduardo has to switch over to the speaker. Eduardo, would you mind trying speaker view? And I'm sorry, I can't.
It is on speaker view.
Yeah, thank you.
And previously, I also had it in the spotlight.
Right. For some reason, the images are not side by side with the slideshow. It's weird. I'm going to send you a picture. Like side by side mode, maybe? Right, but that's going to cover her slides.
Well, we're not even trying to look at her slides. We're trying to look at her, right?
No, we have slides.
It looks like the image you just sent us, Tracy, you can see us. It has to do with the ratio, it looks like.
The ratio on the TV? You guys,
yeah,
it's a whole slide.
On the screen, because you can see us to the right on the image you sent us. It's just you can't, it's just the edges of our 4 boxes.
Yeah, you're right, Julie. Well, is it the ratio of the screen, maybe, with the television?
Like if we do a windowed view, they'll be up top.
Okay. I think we solved it. Sorry. Thanks for rolling with us. And
something like that, maybe.
Great. Kara, we left off when you invited folks to reach out to you in terms of partnerships and programs. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. No problem. We'll tech stuff. We'll figure it out. So yes, I'm who you'll reach out to. And like I said, I'm joined here with my colleagues, so I'm about to just briefly introduce, and you'll receive all of our contact information at the end of this slide. And I'm not sure, I don't remember if I mentioned that I am based on the unceded lands of the Nisenan people, which many people call Sacramento. So that's where I am in relationship to you all today. And I am joined in Zoom by Julie Baker, our CEO, Eduardo Robles, our manager of communications and field engagement, and Terry Ball, our grants manager. We're sad we couldn't all be there today with you, but we know you're in good hands with Tracy and our amazing partners. Regional conversations began in response to COVID-19 as a way to quickly disseminate information and speak to colleagues in each region about business model shifts and funding sources and challenges. And as those issues continue to press on, and funding has in some cases is still being distributed, we still find a lot of value in holding this space, and regional conversations remain really important to ensure that resources reach communities and to continue and advance advocacy within arts and culture sector in ways that benefit local communities, which is what brings us all together today. And we're excited to be kind of in this micro-regional model here in person today. So with that, I know you have copies of the agenda with you, but I'll just kind of go over what you can expect today. We're gonna do a presentation on our end just to share with you. Julie Baker is going to share with you some advocacy updates for both of our organizations, for Californians for the Arts, and then policy priorities and updates from California Arts Advocates, our 501c4 organization. And then throughout the program, we'll have time for questions and answers about what we're presenting. It's a lot of information, but don't worry, not only is this being recorded, the deck and all of the links to the resources will be sent to you. And then we want to listen and hear from you about what's happening for you locally. And so we'll take some time for that. Then y'all will have a break and move on to a portion, sans us on Zoom, about regional initiatives, some exciting regional initiatives, as well as California Creative Course, super exciting as well. Local shout outs, which sounds fantastic. And then a closing and a post-event mixer. And so again, we hope you all enjoy those activities that we cannot join you in. But with that, to kick us off and to get this conversation going, I'm going to hand it over to the CEO of Californians for the Arts and California Arts Advocates, Julie Baker.
Good afternoon, everyone. And again, our apologies, we can't be there all with you today. And thanks for joining with us in this hybrid, a new 21st century model of getting together, where I'm apparently maybe a giant face on your screen. We're here to have wonderful conversations and to share information. My name is Julie Baker. My pronouns are she, her, hers. And today I'm coming from the unceded land of the Nevada City Rancheria Nisenan, otherwise known as Nevada City, California, where I've lived for 24 years. And for those who haven't visited, we're about an hour outside of Sacramento. That in my role as the CEO of these two organizations, I frequently visit in order to lift voices up for the arts, culture, and creative industries. If we can go to the next slide, Eduardo, that would be terrific. So again, we have two organizations, both a C3 and a C4. A C3 is your nonprofit public benefit corporation, and a C4 is a lobbying organization. For those of you who run organizations, you know these are IRS tax codes, and it's very specific what we can and cannot do in both of these organizations. On the lobbying side, on California Arts Advocates, it's really where we directly influence or attempt to influence the state and federal budget processes, as well as legislation, whether we support or introduce legislation or oppose legislation, but also inform you of what's happening in the state and at the federal level that impacts our sector. And then at Californians for the Arts, that is really an advocacy service organization where we do things like this. We convene people, we listen, we share, we act as that bridge between the field and the state and federal government in understanding and educating policymakers to what's happening for our sector. Next slide. So I wanted to just share with you some recent advocacy wins, and these really span the last 2 years. And it's really critical to convey here today and in all of our work is that advocacy is never one organization, one individual, one community alone. It really is all of us together working to advance these goals. So over the last several years, what we saw during the height of the pandemic when we were in many ways, many of us in the arts still shut down, it was really, really critical for us to convey to the government how we are one of the hardest hit industries and how we need specific and increased relief funding at the state level, in addition to all the things we got at the federal level, like the Shuttered Venues Operators Grant Program. So in the year 21-22, we saw over $600 million in California alone invested into arts recovery. And I'm going to go through some of those programs, which will also show you which ones are still open, which ones will be reopening, and hopefully ones that you've either applied for or will consider continuing to apply for. We also were one of the organizations, the lead organization, to work on the first ever creative workforce bill in the United States. It actually was signed by the governor in October of 2021. And we're really excited to tell you a little bit more about that as well. This last year, which had just ended, the budget cycle ends in about July, and then there's like kind of cleanup that happens. But essentially this year, $30 million was allocated to the California Arts Council Cultural Districts Program. $25 million was given to Parks and Recs for Arts and Parks Program. And I'm going to give a little bit more detail on all of these, just because this just gives you an overview, and hopefully you can see just sort of the exciting things that have happened because we've all engaged in advocacy and we've been showing up and being consistently showing up and making our voices heard. And so a couple more, we just saw that the governor signed in late September, SB 1116, which is the Equitable Payroll Fund, which is in response to the impact of AB 5 on performing arts organizations. We also saw, we'll be talking about some more relief funding for cultural institutions and expanded eligibility for California Venues Grant. So these are some of just the quick wins that I wanted to share with you as an overview, and to also just point you to the illustration in the middle, which is our narrative that we've been developing over the last several years around artists or second responders that has really resonated in the legislature with the administration and understanding artists and creatives and cultural bearers' roles in our communities, and has led to things like the California Creative Corps, which you'll be hearing more about. All right, next slide, please. So again, I just wanted to give you some updates on where we stand on all of these wonderful things that your lobbying organization, California Arts Advocates, fought for. And then Californians for the Arts helps provide technical assistance on a number of these grant programs. A number of these grant programs went to the California Office of Small Business Advocate, or CalOSBA. So they were not really as familiar with our industry, let's say, as the California Arts Council. Very, very different type of grants than what you would be used to if you were applying at the California Arts Council or the CAC. These were primarily based on financials and making sure that you fit within certain codes. We've been working very closely on all of these grant programs, and Terry Ball, who's on the call today, is our what we call our grants manager. She's helped a lot of people through these processes to make sure that you're getting the funding you need. The California Venues Grant Program is $150 million that was allocated. Those are grants up to $250,000. That's actually going to be reopening quite soon because we got expanded eligibility, expanded what we call NAICS codes, which are ways to classify organizations in order to apply. That we'll be talking about soon. So stay tuned and make sure if you are a venue in the arts, obviously, and you didn't get to apply because you thought you weren't eligible, consider that you might be able to apply when it reopens. There's also the California Nonprofit Performing Arts Grant Program, which is currently open, and that's for nonprofit arts organizations, performing arts organizations with budgets under $2 million. This gives you payroll assistance up to $75,000. Again, this is in direct response to AB 5, Assembly Bill 5, which made it changed employment code here in the state of California so that it made it more difficult, particularly performing arts organizations, to hire people as independent contractors, performers, people in production, and so on. It increased expenses anywhere from 40 to 80% for organizations. And as we know, those of us in the nonprofit performing arts, how your margins are quite thin to begin with. We certainly didn't want to start seeing $1,000 tickets for community-based programs. So we needed to figure out solutions. And some of this is really to ensure that we get more funding for these organizations that have been hit by the impact of 85, and allows us then to actually pay artists and people within these organizations a minimum wage at the minimum. So it's not a bad thing. It's just that it's something we need to continue to fight for in terms of investment. And then finally, cultural institutions. If you recall, way back 2 years ago, we got $50 million only for cultural institutions in the first iteration of the California Relief Grant Program. Again, because we lobbied saying we were a hard hit industry. It was only expended about $30 million because many of you probably applied just through the regular California Relief Grant Program. We now have $20 million left over. Originally, SBA, again, the state agency, said to the governor, oh, just put it back into the general budget. We lobbied and we said, no, this is an industry that continues to need this funding. Please keep it within this industry. And so there is $20 million around that remains, and that should be reopening soon. And even if you received a grant prior for cultural institutions through California Relief Grant, if there's still dollars left over after we open it up and new people apply, you could reapply. So stay tuned for that. Next slide. I mentioned SB 1116, again, in response to AB 5 and the impact of that. It's a really, really creative solution to look at how to do payroll reimbursements for, again, the small budget nonprofit performing arts sector that did not get an exemption from AB 5, but again, ensures that arts workers are paid a living wage. And yet, although the governor signed it and the legislature passed that through, and a grassroots group of organizers really made that happen with our support and others, including sponsored by Actors Equity and Theater Producers League of Southern California, that remains an unfunded mandate. So you will see in our advocacy in the next year that we'll be looking to try and get funding for that. And finally, I just wanted to mention also that Californians for the Arts was awarded a contract through the California Arts Council for the small nonprofit performing arts organizations under $2 million, again, for a paymaster program. That should be opening early next year. And again, if you're a small, let's say, choral group, community theater group, dance company, and you all of a sudden had to go to going from volunteer-led, writing a check out of a checkbook for people, $800 for 4 months to do contracts for a show, and all of a sudden now you got to do payroll and you got to do unemployment insurance and workman's comp and all of these things that you were not equipped to do. This paymaster is for you. So stay tuned for more information about that. And if any of this is of interest to you or it seems to resonate, and resources that you could access, you would want to contact Terry Ball, our grants manager. Next slide. And then, of course, you're going to hear about the California Creative Corps from Eliza Tudor, who's here today, who got the administrating organizational grant as Nevada County Arts Council, representing a number of regions across the North State. It's an exciting, the largest appropriation to the state arts agency of $60 million. Again, our organization, California Arts Advocates, lobbied for this in December of 2020. And we saw that it reintroduced in the governor's budget, and we were able to now see this realized. It's a really exciting program modeled on the Works Progress Administration. It's really a way to put artists to work. And it's a way to also recognize how artists are important communicators, trusted community leaders, and as both employment and ways to communicate around difficult issues that might need to have behavior change, things around climate, public health, civic engagement, social justice, and other areas. But Liza will be sharing more about that, but really, really exciting. 14 organizations received around $5 million each to redistribute funds within communities. So these funds will be going to artists. Next slide. I mentioned this California Creative Workforce Act. Again, the tenets of that bill are really, again, around this idea that we want to ensure that arts workers are paid a living wage. And we also want to look at how do we diversify this workforce, which is, of course, related to the issue around living wage. And so it is something that we were excited to see get through the legislature. The governor signed, but it, like SB 1116 that I mentioned earlier, it remains unfunded. We want to at least try to see a pilot program for this introduced in the next year. So we'll be fighting for that. And those of you who are 1099 workers, if you've remained that as independent contractors, maybe you were called during the pandemic unemployment assistance from the federal government that came then to the state government. Senator Allen, who is the chair of the Joint Committee on the Arts, he has introduced, and the governor signed, a bill to study the potential opportunity for more of this type of unemployment for self-employed workers. So that's something we're tracking, as arts workers are by far nationally the largest sector of self-employed workers. Next slide. And then cultural districts, again, now just as a note, when I say unfunded mandate, in 2015, the cultural districts was passed in the legislature to establish this as a program under the California Arts Council. 14 pilot districts were created, including Eureka and I think Redding also, and apologies, I don't have that in front of me, and also Nevada County and others across California. However, they weren't given any money to do it. They were given $10,000 over 2 years, which, as you all know, is not enough. It doesn't go very far. So for 7 years, it's taken for us to finally see real investment in cultural districts. And this is just the power of advocacy, consistent advocacy between the Cultural Districts Coalition, our organization, and others, really ensuring that this is something that gets prioritized in the budget. So we're really excited to see $30 million. It's in development at the California Arts Council right now, and I'm sure you'll be hearing more about that soon. Next slide. I mentioned $25 million for art installations in parks. That was something that someone at Parks and Rec actually introduced to the governor as an idea. The governor put it in the budget, and it made it through the budget process this last year. We've been in touch with that department, and we know that there'll be something introduced again, probably in the first quarter of next year around this. But again, this is another opportunity to employ artists in local communities at parks. And I think it's state parks. So hopefully there are state parks in your region as well. I'm sure there are. Next slide. Then, very exciting news for those of us who want to ensure that access to arts for all students happens in the state of California. Prop 28 passed here in the state on November 8th, and this was a really exciting, again, grassroots advocacy introduced by former superintendent of LA schools, Austin Butner. He got a lot of celebrity support, but honestly, when you look at the history of ballot measures, this was not like $400 million like others that were funded at that level. This was a much smaller ballot measure in terms of how much money was put towards it, but it won overwhelming support in the state of California, which really says that people care about arts education and access to arts education for all students across the state. It will ensure close to $1 billion a year for arts education. This is what they call ballot box budgeting. In other words, this tells the legislature, the administration, that this has to happen. They don't have a choice. And so 80% of those funds go to employ certified or classified employees, arts teachers, and 20% can go to non-certified or classified teachers and materials and other things like that. There'll be more details about this coming out very soon. We work very closely with Create California, who are the arts education advocacy organization, and we are in talks with them about making sure that you're all informed about how can you access these funds, whether you are a certified teacher or you want to become one, or you're a nonprofit arts organization that provides these services in your community. How can you advocate to ensure that you can get access to that? As well as $3.5 billion, B for billion, was in the budget this last year for an arts and music block grant program. However, if you can see on the slide, it might be kind of small. Unfortunately, it's a little deceptive, and that says arts and music block grant, but then it has a little bit of everything, as I say, everything but the kitchen sink in the bill. In other words, it even could include things like retirement and healthcare cost increases for a school district. So these are the types of things where advocacy is going to matter at your school district level, because the way that California works is that the funds go through the California Department of Education, and then they go to the local control funding model. So if these are obviously important to you, as they are to all of us, you'll be given a lot of opportunities to advocate at the school board level with tools provided by folks like Create California. Next slide. That's it. All right. So that gives you an overview of some of the stuff that we've been doing as a coalition, and what are some opportunities are currently available to you in terms of resources. And now is a chance to ask any questions about some of the things I presented before I go into kind of what we're going to be doing in this next year.
It's not on.
I can't
There we go.
hear you.
Thanks, Julie. We're going to get everybody a wireless mic who needs to ask questions so they can be recorded. Where did that go? Give us just a sec. Oh, awesome. Sorry, I couldn't see it. Great. Does anybody have any questions for Julie? That was a lot a lot of information.
Hi, Julie, it's Eliza. Fabulous presentation, so much going on. Congratulations to Californians for the Arts. And of course, I speak as a proud board member. I'm sure that folks in the room would love to know more about Prop 28 and how to prepare to actually activate some of those funds and within the communities here. I mean, it's a major, major deal, and you've been really valuable in pushing that through. I'd certainly be interested.
Yeah, thanks, Eliza. And yes, Eliza is an awesome board member for Californians for the Arts and California Arts Advocates. We don't really have a lot of detail yet. I wish I could give you more detail. The funds aren't actually available until July 1st, 2023. And between now and then, there'll be a lot of probably looking at the ballot measure in terms of, are there any things that need to be cleaned up or spelled out more clearly. We do know that there is going to be an issue in terms of not enough certified teachers for arts education in the state of California, as we have issues with just enough certified teachers in general and classified teachers. So we know that there's going to be a quote unquote pipeline issue in that way. So we're really evaluating with Create California again as the lead on this, because it's arts education, what needs to be looked at, whether or not there needs to be anything more clearly spelled out. That's number one. Number two then would be doing trainings and toolkits and ways for you all to be able to advocate at your local school board level, because that's really where it's going to come into play. And in April, during Arts, Culture, and Creativity Month, which hopefully all of you are aware of, which has been designated every April since 2019 by the Senate concurrent resolution to be Arts, Culture, and Creativity Month in the state of California, where we do activations and engagement strategies for celebrating and building awareness of our industry. We'll be actually meeting for the first time in 4 years in Sacramento, and we'll hope that you'll join us there for a summit where we'll be unpacking, as we all like to say these days, some of these issues, including things like Prop 28. And we're really pleased that we'll be doing the summit in collaboration with Create California. So stay tuned. It looks like it's going to be April 17th and 18th in Sacramento, but you'll be getting more information on that. So I guess, Eliza, the answer is it remains to be seen exactly how this will unfold, but as it just got passed, but and that was really the effort to date, was to get it passed. And so thanks to everyone who worked on that and spread the good word and voted for it. The next phase will be, now what do we need to do in terms of advocacy? And one of the things I'll just say in general is that a lot of times people think that once we get the funding, we're done in terms of advocacy. But really, honestly, that's just when it starts. So advocacy is, as everyone has said, a long game. And so once we get the funding, it doesn't matter what agency, whether it's Department of Ed, SBA, California Arts Council, it's really all of us that have to hold them accountable to what the intention of those budget items were and the legislation, to ensure that it gets to the people who need it the most. And so that's part of our work at Californians for the Arts and California Arts Advocates. And again, really critical that you're engaged in that as well.
It's on.
Okay. Hi, I'm Nancy from the Jefferson Pipe Band here in Reading. And I was wondering if there are any grants available in these programs that you've just been speaking about for a non-school situation for a music group.
There's potentially lots of funding out there. It depends in the things that I was mentioning very specifically are some of the relief programs, some of the larger items that have been allocated to the California Arts Council, and then SBA at the state level. And many of these, like the Creative Core program, the intention is to hire artists. So they might have an administrating organization like Eliza is representing today and will tell you more about. But then those programs will be accessible for people to apply specifically for grants to be a part of those that solution in terms of what the Creative Core is hired to do. Similarly, at the California Arts Council, you certainly have a lot of different grant programs. They're looking at general operating support. One of the things I think all of us have seen in these last several years is hopefully a move both in terms of philanthropy and public funding to understanding that we kind of, let us do what we do and don't ask us to fit into certain specific programs, but give us money for general operations. So if you're a nonprofit, those are some of the things that you have there. If you're a for-profit, and potentially, Terry, they could fit into musical groups, fit into the live venues grant. Is that correct? In nonprofit performing arts, if you're a nonprofit.
Yes.
So if you're a for-profit, and I'm not sure if you were a for-profit or nonprofit, the venues grant is something that you would want to look at in terms of when it reopens.
Nonprofit.
And I'd only add to that is chat with your local partner, your county arts agency, which is Nancy and Agatha, who are here in the room, because it's part of our role as county arts councils to make sure that we're fully aware of the of grants that are available at any one time and what the funding cycles are and the grant activity periods, and to be offering technical assistance on grant writing and all those sorts of things. So keep really connected with your local arts council as well.
Any other questions or comments?
Come on, guys, you've got to have some questions here.
Are any of you already active advocates locally on your county level or your state level? Do you have any questions about advocacy itself?
This has been the most amazing year for advocacy, hasn't it? I think you have a question.
I was just wondering that what the, now that all of this has been passed and gone through, what is the California Arts Advocates focusing on now in terms of lobbying?
He did not. Next on the agenda.
Perfect segue. Thank you so much. We'll get to the next part of the presentation and we'll give you an overview of what we're fighting for next. And we want to hear from you after that. If this doesn't resonate or isn't what you think needs to be fought for, we represent and work with you. So let us know. So we'll go to the next part of it. And thank you for that question. So overall, and this is my fun little trick that apparently is trending now. So as the CEO of two organizations, I can't actually cut myself in half, but what I can do is I can change my glasses to indicate that now I am the CEO of California Arts Advocates, the lobbying organization. And so with my red glasses on, which are a little bit dirty now, I wish I cleaned them before I put them on, I will share with you what overall our policy goals, so to answer the gentleman's question, and then we'll get into some more specifics. So really overall, what our organization looks to do, both in terms of educating and fighting for resources at the state and federal level, but primarily at the state level, are ways to support a sustainable and thriving industry for the arts, culture, and creativity. So that's number one, is what we're always looking for, is how can we do that? We're also always, which of course is increased investment. Most people will say we just need more money and access to the money. And how can you make access to the money easier so you don't have to have a master's in grant writing to access those funds? We also know that the creative workforce, what we learned in these last several years, particularly how vulnerable our workforce is that when we really don't have systems to protect in terms of things like unemployment insurance, long-term pensions and benefits, healthcare, or you might have access to it, but maybe you can't afford then the care itself. There's lots of studies that have now shown what it is that we need to be looking at in terms of how can we build out a more sustainable workforce in addition, as part of the overall infrastructure for the industry. I think we can also all agree that unfortunately there has been a long sort of history and romanticization of the starving artist, and that's something we want to completely eliminate. We don't think that artists need to be starving, nor should be starving. They should be valued and invested in as really important contributors to our communities, our local communities. The work that they do should be seen as work, should be seen as labor. And the creative process should be valued as much as we value R&D for manufacturing. So those are some of the things that we always are looking at. How do we both educate and look for policies that can support these ideas? And including, of course, fighting for racial and cultural equity. We know that in the state of California, Spanish is actually the majority language in the state of California, and yet most programs are still only being delivered in English, or maybe they're being delivered in Spanish, but they're not literally translating culturally into communities. How can we do a better job of recognizing that in a community, a Latinx community, there might be 20 different types of cultures? In our indigenous communities, how can we uplift and support and celebrate the originality and the authenticity of these communities and not ask people to be homogenized and fit into one bucket? So that's something that we're also always looking to, again, what policies and resources can we support? One of the things that we strongly believe is that we can affect social change through arts and culture. So we want to see that arts and culture are part of that process, are valued in that process, and invested in and paid to be a part of that process. And again, more along the lines of what I just was talking about in terms of cultural diversity, ensuring racial and cultural representation, and reflecting who we truly are as California in terms of inclusive history and identity. And cultural districts can be a great example of a policy that could support cultural diversity in the state of California. So that kind of gives you an overview. A lot of how we get to this place and what do we determine? Number one, we have a 24-person board that really has incredible geographic, ethnic, sexual orientation, diversity on our board, so that we're ensuring that we are representing what we believe to be what California looks like. We can always improve upon that, and we are working to improve upon that. And if you're ever interested to be on our board, we ask that you please reach out. In addition, we do these types of events, this time hybrid and in person, but most of the time, we're really trying to hear from you. We need to understand what it is that the field needs, in addition to the 24 folks on our board giving us indications. We want to hear from you. So regional conversations are a great method for us to do that. We've learned a lot from these various relief programs that we've been giving. And then there's a terrific study that Wolf Brown, which is a consulting firm, was hired by the California Arts Council to do, and that is still in process, but it gives us a lot of data points on who is receiving funding in the state of California for arts and culture and who's not. And I'm probably not going to be give you too many surprises here when we say that both Black, Indigenous, persons of color communities, and rural communities are lagging way behind in terms of who's getting access to resources for arts and culture. And again, something we want to see change, and something that we need to fight to see that change. So some of the summarized needs are things around technical assistance. As Eliza mentioned, your state local partner, Shasta Arts Council, Mendocino Arts Council, and others can really support you in helping you to be able to access all these funds that are at the state and federal level. But we also know that there's a lot of folks who are creative entrepreneurs who are starting small businesses, whether they're nonprofit or for-profit, and need more technical assistance to access capital to build their businesses and to really insert themselves inside of community and economic development, which I'm excited you're going to hear from California Forward, our partners, who really have been working very closely with the Governor's Office of Business and Economic Development, who I believe are also here today to talk about the Community Economic Resiliency Fund, or the SURF program, which is a regional way to really uplift and invest in communities for economic and community development. So this gives you an idea of some of the things that we're looking at in terms of programs and things to insert for policy development. I'll go to the next slide, just give you a bit more specifics too. So these are the real specific of what we will be trying to get next year and into the budget. Now, let me just also preface that if you read the news, you might have seen that yesterday, the Legislative Analyst Office, or what they call the LAO, came out with a report that showed that the state of California is $25 billion behind in revenue projections. So likely what you're going to see in the next several years is not the level of spending we've seen in the last couple of years. Both the last couple of years, we've had federal infusion of dollars because of the pandemic, and we've had just an incredible, income tax roll. Now we're starting to see income tax, going down, as well as the technology sector is laying off people. All of that really affects the state of California's budget. So likely some of this might be harder in this next year, and we're going to just need you even more to really tell your elected officials, your local elected officials, how important it is to continue to see investments in our sector. So the State Arts Agency will be working on a couple of different things to try and get funding there for both the California Creative Workforce Act, as well as increasing the baseline funding. We're going to be looking at how do we get dollars for that unfunded and to date mandate, the SB 1116 Performing Arts Equitable Payroll Fund, to again address the impact of AB5 specifically. We're looking at things around technical assistance, specifically for the creative entrepreneurs, nonprofit and for-profit, through California Office of Small Business Advocate. And then finally, the Governor's Office of Business and Economic Development. One of the things we'd love to see them think about and put together as a whole for this state within the administration is a strategic plan. What is the future for the creative economy in the state of California? How can we be responsible and sustain it so that these investments of $600 million and others are not putting good money after bad, but actually a long-lasting investment that really shows us as the leading state of creativity. So those are, a strategic plan across all of the, so that we're not so siloed, but we're really integrated into the overall way that California looks at how to advance its economy and its health and to be a thriving state. We want to be a part of that. Next slide. These are just some facts to give you an idea of where we stand in terms of overall funding for the arts in the state of California, specifically to our state arts agency. That's what this is comparing. So just to give you some idea on where we stand in terms of the California economy, our overall contribution to the state's gross domestic product is 7.5%. It's a $225 billion industry. That's actually ahead of things like retail, construction, and transportation. But I can assure you those three get a whole lot more headlines and a lot more investment than our sector. So, and where do we compare in funding in terms of other states? Sometimes it's shaming our elected officials to say, hey, we need more investment. Look at what we're doing compared to others. When we're California, 25% of the United States creative economy is in California. So we are actually 66 cents in baseline funding for the arts. Compared to other states, New York, Massachusetts are over $2 per capita, it means per person. And Minnesota is actually over, it's about $7 right now per capita. Next slide. So, and this gives you a history of, again, the State Arts Agency. And again, although in these last several years, we've really worked to make sure that we're seeing in other buckets of funding. And that's important because there's always going to be a lot more money for small business. And there's always going to be a lot more money unless we dramatically change the landscape of how arts and culture are funded. And maybe someday we will. But until that time, we need to be seen inside of community and economic development, inside of tourism, inside of public health, and all of these other buckets of funding, workforce development. But let's look at the State Arts Agency. For right now, back in the year 2000, almost 23 years ago, the State Arts Agency baseline budget ongoing funding was $30.7 million. Fast forward to today, the baseline funding for the arts is $26 million. If you adjust for inflation, we actually should be closer to $50 million for baseline funding. So we're lagging behind. Now, you can also see in this graph that for 10 years, the state of California's funding, and I'm sure some of you in the audience remember this, was $1 million. And that was only because we could then continue to get our match from the NEA. So you can see, as the graph shows, we've been stair-stepping, increasing. So yay, it's gotten better. And I have to say the Newsom administration has been really great in introducing one-time funding and project funding, like the California Creative Corps, massive investment, creative youth development, cultural districts. But where we haven't seen any increase is in the baseline. So that's really for like your arts councils, for your general operating support, for your arts and schools programs, for your arts and veterans programs, all of these different programs that the Arts Council offers. Without increasing the baseline, it only can go to a certain amount and to as many people as they can fund. And what we consistently see is that those programs are oversubscribed. So what we would like to see is the state of California invest $1 per capita. Let's get us from 26 million to 40 million, even with the loss of revenue. You're still talking about a very significant budget, around $300 billion for the state of California. Asking for a $40 million investment in nonprofit arts and culture and in artists directly is not too much to ask when you look at what we bring to our communities. So that is something that we will be fighting for. And hopefully you'll be joining it. And I believe Issues here from California Forward, they've become really great partners and work towards including arts and culture and the creative economy as part of the overall California economy. I actually have some issues with calling ourselves a creative economy because I think it separates us from the rest of the economy. We are integral to the rest of the economy, but let's just say we are separated. We are the creative, or we are coined the creative economy. What's really exciting is that this year we were actually part of a working group at the California Economic Summit, which happens annually, brought forward by California Forward, who you'll be meeting soon, who've been working on that surf program. And, the year prior, we were the entertainment. We were literally the lunchtime folklorica dance and the background music during the cocktail reception. Fast forward a year later, and we are a working group. And so these are some of our priority areas that you can see listed on the screen. And we're really grateful for California Forward and our vice chair of California Arts Advocates, Gustavo Herrera from Arts for LA, who sits on California Forward's board, for recognizing the importance of including the creative economy in the overall advancement of California. So thank you to them for that. And if you're interested in being a part of that working group, we launched it in October in Bakersfield, and it will be working throughout the year, and we'll be rejoining again next year in Coachella Valley. Next slide. And then quickly, this could be a whole 3-hour presentation itself, but the federal advocacy, we also work on that. There's a lot of stuff happening at the federal level. Of course, we just had the elections. So, make sure that we both had the elections here in the state and the federal level. One of the things that you can be doing right now is making sure you know who your elected official is for your state Senate and your assembly member and your congressional representatives. If they're new, introduce yourselves. If they return, welcome them back, and introduce what you do in your community and the impact you bring. And specifically for funding in federal level, the Senate has introduced $195 million for the NEA and NEH, National Endowment for the Arts and National Endowment for Humanities. And the House has introduced $207 million. Of course, we'd rather see what the House has done. Of course, the makeup is changing in the House, but we like to say we put the art in bipartisan. Often arts really receive bipartisan support because every community benefits from having a healthy arts community. You can see a number of other things that have been introduced. Some of these are really messaging bills. In other words, we don't necessarily think that they'll get through Congress, but they're important in terms of what they call socializing an issue, including advancing equity through Arts and Humanities Act, introduced by Congresswoman Barbara Lee. And also just to note that President Biden has reintroduced the Committee for the Arts and Humanities. So again, we're seeing that there's a lot of momentum in the elevation of arts and culture and creative industries and the workforce as integral to our communities and to our states and to the federal government. So let's keep that momentum going. And I think that's the last of my slides. I think. Yes. So now is the chance for you to either ask some questions on what I just introduced or tell us what we're missing. What are the gaps that need to be filled that you don't feel like you're being represented in public policy, and maybe public policy can help solve?
Hi there, Nancy Hill from the Arts Council. I think rurally, I don't know if you guys have, in terms of advocacy, any connective tissue to smaller SLPs in California to help us create our own economic impact studies and bring those in to help us advocate at the local level with our state, our local principalities, agencies, city, county. It would really be beneficial for us to do that.
Yeah, no, thank you for that feedback. That's great. I know Eliza is investing in what AFTA does, Americans for the Arts, in terms of an economic report. And I know that's not necessarily accessible for all communities to do because it is somewhat of a little bit of an investment. But that is something to be noted. We hear a lot that rural communities need to also have their own coalition and to share ideas and stories and what has worked and ways that we can build a narrative together. So actually very, very much noted. And the other thing I should also mention is that we are building out a program because one of the things we've found out of these regional conversations are really the areas where there isn't necessarily the infrastructure yet for advocacy and where it's needed. And so I think North State, Central Valley, some of the places that we've seen where there could really be built out more of advocacy infrastructure is something we're interested in being able to offer and are looking for funding to continue to build out that infrastructure. So that would include things like giving you access to data and reports and case making in general. So how can you go in front of your city councils, your county supervisors, and make the case as well as to represent yourselves at the state level?
I love that you relate the development of, for example, an economic impact study to case making, to advocacy. It's all tied in. And Nancy, we can talk with you about, we're just rolling out our second county-wide economic impact study in partnership with Americans for the Arts. And this year, one of the delicious things about that is that Americans for Arts are weaving in a very strong social impact element to it, which is measuring the degree to which our BIPOC communities and our underrepresented communities are actually participating and contributing simultaneously. So there's a very strong social bent. So it's all the more reason for you to get engaged, and I can help you. Perhaps we can talk about that at our next state local partner coalition meeting in terms of getting engaged with Americans for the Arts. They make it easier and easier. It does seem like a little bit expensive. How we've managed to do it in Nevada County Arts Council is just engage a number of really solid volunteers. And there are things that you can start doing even before Americans for the Arts and you partner just to do the foundational work.
We at the Creative Economy Working Group heard from Blue Sky, San Luis Obispo, Santa Barbara area. And it's an arts colony type of situation. And he kept looking at data, economic and all kinds of data on the region, and that there were these great error numbers, like big margins of error for what the data may or may not reflect. And he was like, we could just do a survey and execute it through through all kinds of very creative measures, through a newsletter, through events and things like that, gathered data on the local arts and culture scene themselves and took that on, if that's an option as well. Any other questions or comments or thoughts?
Hiring on our team a policy and research analyst. And so that could be a service as part of our, what we're calling RAIN, which is the Regional Advocacy Infrastructure Network Program, where we could offer services in the state to folks to build out that case making. So stay tuned, but in the meantime, definitely continue those conversations with Eliza.
Could I ask a question? I apologize if I missed it, but was there any specific language around internet access in your policy priorities?
Yeah, digital access, internet access is a big, I would say that's more sort of the, the what do we call the peripheral or proximate issues. It's obviously really important, particularly for rural communities. I know I live in one where it's not as accessible for everyone. So, but thanks for bringing that up. Is there anything more specifically you'd want to tell us about that?
I was just curious if, I imagine, just like you said, it's an issue that affects everyone. I was just wondering how it intersected with the arts priorities. Just because we're, here in Shasta County, definitely super, super rural out here.
Laurel, with GoBiz, is that something you might be able to speak to at all too in terms of regional, I know in terms of economic development funding and some of the focus in terms of broadband for all, there's federal and state dollars and effort towards that, but I don't know if you had any comments to add on rural broadband access that you're thinking about. No, Laurel's here with us from GoBiz, and you'll get to meet her, so I don't mean to put you on the spot just yet, but yeah, and you can just say, yeah, I have something to say about that right now, or no, and if you do, I'll hand you the mic.
I promise I'll include it in what I deliver.
Awesome. She'll speak to that when she presents. Thank you. Anybody else?
Any questions about cultural districts?
Yeah, I mean, it's so exciting with the new investment in the California cultural districts. And I'm wondering if any of you in the room, bearing in mind we're in one of California's 14 California cultural districts, have questions about that and the extent to which you're feeling engaged. It might be a perfect moment with your lead agency for the arts, at least, in the room. Do you have any of your partners for the California Cultural District in the room too, Nancy?
Yeah, I see Heather. Heather's part of our historical society. She's our ED from the Historical Society. I'm not seeing Carlo Henry is part of Viva Downtown. He has Art Hunger within that organization, and as I mentioned, a board member. But no, I don't see any of our partners here today, unfortunately. But we have a very active cultural district. We have 6 original partners and about 10 organizations now participating in the cultural district in our community, economic, creative, etc. And we've got a lot of steam behind us. The designation for our district has afforded us the opportunity to do about $32 million worth of downtown renovation and reconfiguring, and it's really exciting to see that designation help us move forward as a city and a county, and it's really opened up our whole cultural world in downtown and in the whole.
That's really fantastic, Nancy. And at the moment, Julie, you will probably know that all the California cultural districts are being asked to present a 5-year sort of retrospective report on work. And we all know that looking forwards, one of the key things, as well as cultural districts being an economic driver, which is really one of the central tenets that drove the inception of them, that the California Arts Council will be looking increasingly to how we as California cultural districts serve our diverse populations across California. So that's going to be a wonderful challenge. And I know that you have fabulous community resource groups. We were talking about them earlier that look at what diversity and access and inclusion means for Redding and Shasta.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. All right, Californians for the Arts team. If you want to move on to the next topic. Did we lose the Zoom? Well, no. Oh, there's Kara.
To the how to stay involved slide. Is there any? Great. Okay, great. Okay, well, thank you so much for sharing a bit with us today and allowing us to share our priorities. We want to share more about how to stay involved, get involved if you're not already involved. First and foremost, we rely on members to keep these programs free and value them greatly. So thank you to everyone in the room who is a member. But we encourage everyone to become a member as an individual and organization or as an organization. You can also stay engaged with us on social media at Californians for the Arts, as well as at California Arts Advocates, and share our posts, tag your legislators, keep them involved in the work we're doing. If you can express interest in joining the Creative Economy Working Group, provide public comment at the local level at your city council meetings, let them know what you're doing, what challenges you're facing in the arts, and get involved in regional advocacy as you can, or reach out to us about RAIN, and ask us about our consulting services, and participate in Arts, Culture, and Creativity Month, which we're really excited about. We hope we may be able to see some of you in Sacramento, or at the very least engage with you in our digital campaigns throughout the month of April. So with that, thank you everyone for being here. I think we will sign off from Zoom now, and hope that you enjoy the rest of the program in person.
Great. One more slide. There we go. Cool. And this deck will be emailed to you as well. So you'll have all the contact information that's provided. Thank you, team. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great afternoon. Thanks, Tracy, for holding down the fort for CFTA and CAA. We truly appreciate it. We'll see you guys soon.
Everyone. Yay. Great.
Recording stopped.
Great. And if we could share this at my screen for a second. So one of the key pieces of regional conversations is, one, being present with you, hearing about your priorities, and that might also come up in the conversation, the Creative Core conversation in the next part of the program. And the other thing is the survey. And you, in your confirmation email today, you were sent a link to this, or you can type this into your browser on your phone. And if you could just take it, it's like just a 5-minute, and we're also going to take a break, so it could be part of your break. And let us know some things about your priorities, what you think you want us to know about your challenges and such, and also I think I already said priorities a couple times. So yeah, that would be very helpful to us in terms of shaping this year's budget work. And the governor announces the budget January 10th. And we will be meeting, and on the lobbying side, we'll be preparing talking points and doing trainings and all that kind of stuff for all of us to participate in advocacy with local and state legislators through the January to April. And the budget is finalized in May. So that'll be when we'll be setting you in motion. So that'll be cool. So if you could take some time to take the survey, we'll take a short break, and then we'll come back probably in about 10 minutes or so.
Please help yourself.
First, I just want to read my notes. Okay, here we go. As Julie expressed, Californians for the Arts is deeply committed to shifting the paradigm and how arts, culture, tradition, and our traditions and creativity are valued in the state, and to diversify and increase the investments in our sector. And this requires partnerships, cross-sector partnerships, innovative, collaborative programs, and thinking outside the box in terms of who do we talk to, who do we reach out with, who do we build relationships with, et cetera. And we're super, super excited this year to talk about both regional partners and initiatives, relationships that we've really just begun to start to cultivate. And let me just give a little map of this part of the conversation. So we're going to be hearing from Laurel Harkness, GoBiz. She is the North State Regional Coordinator for their Community and Place-Based Solutions Unit. And GoBiz has been super proactive. That's the Governor's Office of Business and Economic Development. Super proactive in terms of recognizing the importance of the arts to both economies and communities, and reaching out to us to partner and to engage and to connect our field with them and what they're building. And it's really kind of based on the governor's approach, a regions up approach, which we hope will continue no matter what happens with the administration, the legislation, et cetera, because this is meaning a lot on a lot of different levels. Secondly, first we're going to zoom in Ish Herrera from California Forward. So I'll introduce that. Then we'll talk to Laura. Excuse me, I got a little joke. Laurel, and talk about her work and the Community and Economic Resilience Fund, SURF, and other topics. And then I'll introduce some resources that Californians for the Arts is developing in order to help you, support you, engage in cross-sector work and economic development processes. So if we could zoom in, say hello to Ish, or bring Ish in. I think we might have to get my slides out of the way. And then I'll be sharing their contact information via slides as well. So, okay. And first, let me just say that California Forward is a statewide organization similar to Californians for the Arts in terms of connecting the whole state and serving. The word is watchdog on some levels, but actually they're much more generative than that. They're focused on government accountability and effectiveness and economic development, equitable, sustainable economies that lift all boats. And if we could just say hello to Ish. Thank you so much for joining us. There you are.
Hi, everybody. Good to be joining you via Zoom. Would have loved to have been there in person, although I will be there in person next week on a different matter. So look forward to meeting some of you then. But happy to be dialing in here from rural Fresno County here in the Central Valley. Thank you, Julie, Tracy, and the entire team at Californians for the Arts for the invitation to speak here today. And more importantly, for your ongoing partnership with our organization and our efforts in the various regions of California. So California Forward, as was stated, is a statewide 501c3 organization. And let me apologize because I have a little coworker that's demanding my attention right now as well. So give me 1 second. My apologies, but we are a statewide 501c3 organization. We're really focused on formulating pragmatic triple bottom line solutions that incorporate the engagement and the participation of representatives from across a variety of sectors, including your sector. We understand and value the contributions that you all make to the economy, and that you are an integrated part of the economy, not a silo off to the side. And so what we do a lot of at California Forward is set those tables in the middle related to people's political preferences, people's policy preferences, and we really hold that space in the middle to bring people from different sectors, different viewpoints to the table. And we certainly don't shy away from difficult conversations. I think those of you who were able to participate in our annual economic summit this last year in Bakersfield a month ago, less than a month ago, or certainly can testify to that we try to bring balanced conversations and put them front and center at all our events. Well, we also carry out our portfolio of work, our portfolio of collective action on priorities that have common denominators across the regions of California. We do it alongside of our organizations up and down the state that are part of our California Stewardship Network. This is a network of regional backbone organizations that are doing a lot of the similar work we do statewide, but they do it in their respective regions. And these individuals are really the steward leaders of places like the North State, like the Redwood Coast, like the Greater Sacramento region, that are helping us advance the collective action agenda around policies, programs, and practices, and really helping us stay accountable and honest to what the realities are in the field, in the regions, on the ground, in neighborhoods and communities, how decisions that are made at a broader macro statewide level and often federal level as well are really impacting communities and families in the various regions of California. And so we really rely on the partnerships with those organizations to be able to do that up and down the state. And we're very happy to be, working with Californians for the Arts to do that with your sector and be able to understand a little bit better how it is decisions and funding decisions and investments are affecting your sector, and working alongside of your coalition to advocate for things that are important to all our communities and to continue to support the contributions you all make. As mentioned before by Julie, we're committed to your sector's important contributions to quality of life in California and the robustness of our economy. Within our board of directors, which we call our leadership council, we have the CEO of Arts for LA, Gustavo Herrera, who sits on that governance body for us and provides a lot of good contributions to discussions. And really, it was one of the champions you all had as a sector to help us launch this year at our summit, the Creative Economy Working Group that was mentioned earlier, which accounted with the participation of a DJ in that session, which was really fascinating. It's really set the bar high for others to do the same with their work groups. What I'll say about this regional conversation we're having today, which I've been following and has been really great to hear from all of you, and this series of regional conversations taking place, is that for us at California Forward, it's really a continuation of the partnership with CFTA, and in many ways an extension of the listening sessions that we did around surf with CFTA in spring of this year, where we try to be proactive and provide a forum for many of you and others in your region to provide input and ask questions and try to get a better understanding of what the Community Economic Resiliency Fund was going to be. That has since been that proposal. Those proposals have been submitted by the various applicants. Guidelines were shaped with the input that you all provided during those spring sessions and beyond. And in your region, there are two co-regional conveners that I'm sure folks from GOBAS may touch on later. And there's also a fiscal agent that's working with them to launch activities in the coming year to make sure that your sector is included and you have a seat at the table with those planning activities. And the only thing I'll say is that we see the value, we see the importance of making sure that every community in California has a robust creative arts sector in its community. It does much more than just create places, destinations for travelers and tourists. They're a fabric of the economic cloth of each community. They're an integral part of the small business community. Many of you are, all of you are entrepreneurs and small business owners in some way or shape or form. And those are things that don't get lost, should not get lost on local governments when it comes to things like sales tax revenue, quality of life improvements, walkability, and so many other things that your sector touches and contributes to. So, as an economic development practitioner myself and a member of this team, just know that it doesn't get lost on us, how important you are to the quality of life in California and to the quality of life in each of our communities, whether it's urban, rural, north, south, inland, or coastal. You all play an important role in every one of those type of spaces. So I commend you, and we look forward to continuing to work alongside of our friends at Californians for the Arts. And I wish you all happy holidays and enjoy the rest of your program today.
Can you speak to what triple bottom line means to California Forward?
Yeah, for us, we're always looking to not only surface solutions, but identify what the challenges are from a perspective that takes into account not only economic conditions, so the economy, but also what are some of the challenges related to the environment and climate that ought to be contemplated simultaneously. And then the 30 is the E of equity. And so what implications do challenges, solutions, conversations have on underserved, disadvantaged communities, communities of color? What regions are affected more than others? So equity can mean so many things, right? And so we deploy that framework for our thinking on analyzing challenges, trying to formulate solutions collectively with our region of partners. And we don't just focus on one need. We try to bring a balanced conversation of how the other elements are taken into account to mediate some of those problems that we all confront. And where we can find those common denominator challenges, that's where we harness our collective action and try to advocate together so that our voice is larger as together than it would be individually. And so that's where, we invite all of you to stay connected to CFTA and by default, stay connected to us through those efforts as well.
Thank you so much for that. And what was really amazing when we were doing some planning with the listening session with the team at California Forward, there was like a dozen of your teammates on the call, and at least 7 or 8 of them had some active connection to the art, either as an artist or some kind of creative practice or some kind of. So it was really great to just have that be visible to us within your own team, and really inspiring. And absolutely right in terms of brave conversations, the California Economic Summit that happened in Bakersfield, a lot of focus on green and sustainable energy. And of course, Bakersfield and that area is deeply rooted in oil production and that important industry for California. And how do we have a safe conversations around solutions and transitioning some of our energy sources, things like that. California Forward took us right to the heart of that conversation. It was very brave and really rich. Thank you so much. Oops.
Time again. I wish you all a great rest of the program. Thanks for indulging me with my little coworker in the background, and we look forward to continuing our partnership with you all.
Thank you so much. Thanks. And thanks to your coworker. That was delightful. Great. There's clapping. And next, I'd love to invite up Laurel Harkness. As I said, she's the regional coordinator for North State for Governor's Office of Business and Economic Development, the Community and Place-Based Solutions Unit. Come on up.
Applause. The spotlights and everything. Hi, everybody. So Laurel Harkness, and I am the Regional Economic Recovery Coordinator for the North State region. And I am with the Governor's Office of Business and Economic Development. I am not based in Sacramento. I'm actually based very nearby in Mount Shasta, California, where I lived for 20 years. I'm part of the Community and Place-Based Solutions unit within GoBiz. It's a sort of complicated agency in the sense that business and economic development, for the 4th largest economy in the world, is, you can imagine, we've got a lot of different units as part of us, and so there's some arm waving going on. Are we good?
I'm just gonna change the slide while you're talking. Sorry.
Stand by. Okay, thank you. I don't know about that, but so I'm part of the Community and Place-Based Solutions unit within GoBiz. It's a new unit that was propped up sort of in acknowledgement of the fact that economic development throughout the state is better when it's done from the regions up and not necessarily from the top down. And so there was legislation. Oh, should I be doing something here? We're good.
I'm so sorry to be distracting you.
No, that's okay. So, so there was legislation passed that created this thing called the Community and Economic Resilience Fund, and there were 13 regions established. And so the middle map there is my map, and so you can see the North State region is the 10-county region that I serve, and I've got colleagues established in each of the other 13 regions that serve to coordinate and connect dots across the region. So the Community Economic Resilience Fund is a partnership program. The Economic Development Department or the Employment Development Department, EDD, we use acronyms. So it's when I have to translate it, it gets a little difficult. But EDD is the lead agency on that. The other agency would be the Office of Planning and Research, and then GoBiz is the third agency involved in that. $650 million have been set aside for that program. Each of the 13 regions, I think, as Ish mentioned, there's been conveners that have been selected for each of those regions, and in the North State, that those conveners are co-conveners, and it's the North State Planning and Development Collective out of Chico State, alongside Sierra Institute for Community Environment, and they're an organization that's based out of the Plumas County area, and so together they'll span the broad region really well. They've got complementary strengths. I'm really looking forward to supporting their efforts. In terms of time frame, they're in the planning process now, so there will be, or I'm sorry, they're in the contracting process now for the planning, and so once those contracts are settled, hopefully within the next couple of months, they'll be convening regional planning efforts. And so hopefully all of you will be included in that. The planning effort will lead to what will look like a regional economic development strategy. And I liked what Julie had to say about ensuring that you're not isolating yourselves as the creative economy, and rather integrating that into the main economy. We are a region, and we have an economy, and you can put lots of different labels on the different factions of it, but I think it's very important to make sure everybody's represented in this sort of primary economic development strategy, and not have disparate regional efforts. So and I can be a point of contact and help connect you into that process. And I think there is a high level of acknowledgement that this is a low capacity region. Let's just say, we've got volunteer organizations and, the low capacity organizations that were busy administering grants, writing grants. And so to participate in a regional planning effort is challenging, and will present some challenges, but I think the conveners will get really creative in terms of how to make sure everybody's heard in that process. One of the objectives is making sure it's an inclusive economic development process. I think historically economic development has been done by very specialized individuals, and it's been very industry focused, but I think the move here is to make sure it's very community focused. And so once the planning phase is done, there will be an implementation phase, and there's $500 million of the $650 million that will be available for projects that the region identifies as being priorities. And so, and I do hope to see some arts initiatives within that, certainly. And I think, I want to sort of deviate from the script a little bit. And just when I think about the region that we serve here, I work a lot with the wildfire impacted communities, of which, Shasta County is one. Plumas County is also, we have a high level of ACEs, the adverse childhood experiences, sort of, a lot of trauma within these communities, and the arts is a real help in sort of working with that and getting past that. And so I'd love to, maybe hear from all of you at later in the day, in terms of how that enters into your work. I'm going to admit my background is all in outdoor recreation and natural resources, and I work on the ground and sort of parks, open spaces, that kind of thing. And so it's not necessarily in the creative lane, but I think that there's lots of crossover, and I'd love to hear kind of how you're impacting your communities in the ways that you are within Shasta County, and hopefully that will inform the regional side of things. So we had a question about broadband. So yeah, in my role, I have to know a little bit about a lot of things. And so I can't get too deep with the broadband, but we do have, I can always help connect you with people within GoBiz. We do have 2 specialists on our team that are specific to broadband, and they are accessible for questions. And I'm, all of our contact information is on the GoBiz team website. We like to be visible. We like to be accessible to everybody. And that's not true of all the state agencies. We are sort of a small unit, but there is a lot of activity around and investment around broadband. I'd say one of the groups that is probably most tied to it is the SURF convener, so the North State Planning and Development Collective. They'd be a great resource and can help answer any questions. I think the local government representatives, the counties in particular, are very tuned in to what sorts of initiatives and opportunities are available there, because the rural counties representatives of California, they seem to be doing quite a lot in broadband. So that's about all I have to say about that. If you have any ideas or information or questions about the SURF process or GoBiz in particular, anything to do with business and economic development, either in Shasta County or the region, I'd be really happy to be a point of contact for you. So,
does anybody have any questions now?
It's going to be a tough one, I can tell.
Not at all. I'm going to make it really, really easy. So say, for example, a local arts agency wants to learn more and learn more locally. Would their county be a place to begin, assuming there's an economic development department, for example? So say, for example, Nancy, who's executive director of Shasta County Arts Council, wanted to learn more about surf. Would a starting place be the county with whom she partners, or would it be directly with you or someone else?
A good point of contact would be me, and then I introduce you right to the conveners, the North State Planning and Development Collective and Sierra Institute. And as I mentioned, they're just like they're high capacity. They are doing contracting. They've got lots of other initiatives on their plate, very exciting initiatives, and so they're doing a little bit of juggling now. And so I expect after the first of the year they'll be a little bit more organized. But there's no timeline on making those connections. The counties, while they may have some awareness about the program, I love county government, and I just if I have a zombie apocalypse team, I'm going to select a county supervisor and a school board member and an arts council member. But these are really, there's a lot going on in local government now, and it's very difficult for them to be very tuned into all the different state programs out there, all the different federal funding programs. I mean, I'm in the business and I have a difficult time keeping track. The California budget is enormous. It really is, and there's lots of simultaneous projects going on, lots of policy with funding attached to it that's going on, and so we're all sort of juggling a little bit, but I think together we can find the right person for you to get more information. And a lot of these funding programs too have very quick turnarounds on grant application periods. And so I know that that's very challenging, especially in communities that have sort of lower capacity. It was really great to hear. I think there was a mention that, the County Arts Council really is responsible for, like, at any given moment of time, knowing what source of funds are available. And that's such a valuable resource. And so, just having that like intermediate local level is critical. And so those are the best contacts, and I know how to find you. So if somebody comes to me with a question, I'm going to refer them to the County Arts Council, so we have to work together. We have to work cross agency and in partnership and be generous and gracious in the information and contacts we share in the networks also. And thank you. Thanks for having me.
That's such a great and helpful perspective to contribute. And I just want to comment too that this approach, the community and place-based solutions, one, we mapped our regions this year to match the GoBiz regions for this very reason. Because each of the individuals, each of you that has come to speak, Eliza in the second half of the program is going to show you this healthy places index, like looking down at numbers kind of a thing. this approach that from people who live within the region, I'm just so struck by one, the deep knowledge, the deep love and the wisdom and sensitivity to the complexity of your local region, and the fact that you're bringing these conversations. It's just an amazing structure and approach, and we're so grateful for your receptivity to partnering with us and being in communication with us as well.
Well, thank you. I think the arts are critical to economic development and community wellness and the quality of life that we all have. So thank you.
Great. Thank you. And to that end, in terms of getting involved in planning, those are some resources that Californians for the Arts is developing. So in any planning instance, whether it's like your land use planning, the general plan, or your city or county or regional economic development plan, these all start with a vision statement. Getting involved as advocates in the vision statement, making sure culture, social well-being, creativity are valued in the vision statement. And then there's the strategies and being involved to help shape and give feedback and input on the strategies. So we, what we've coached some other regions in terms of getting involved with SURF is, don't just come to the table with, hey, we want to get money to our programs, but come to the table as a partner. What do we have to offer to this process, right? Well, so many of you maintain or connected to very trusted spaces in the community, and offering your space as a convening place for engagement in the planning process, so that folks don't just have to go to a boardroom at a government building, but they're going to someplace in their neighborhood, and we can offer some arts activities for kids so parents and families can come. So there may be ways to partner in that way. Maybe there'll be resources to support that kind of thing. Coming to the table as partners is really helpful. And with that in mind, this is the contact information. Laurel's information is as well. And then these is the contact information for the Upstate Creative Coordinator, Eliza's group. And there's also a couple of statewide programs that will be rolling out. The Creative Corps is so brand new. There aren't guidelines. There's no applications. You'll learn a lot more with working with Eliza this afternoon on developing your local program. But as the programs start to roll out, we'll be able to provide additional information. So be sure to sign up for our newsletters, et cetera. And then we've developed an arts and economic development webpage, and I'm going to show that to you because this is a work in progress that we're going to be working on with you. We've got a one sheet with a role on giving just some details on how does arts interact with local economic development, like even talking about grant resources and bringing in state dollars or federal dollars or however folks are that. And an economic development lens, that's like, oh, great, we brought in outside dollars to our economy. That's a value add. Just even that work that you're doing is helpful. So we've got a one sheet to download for information on that. This is a screenshot of the illustrated note taking from our Creative Economy Working Group session, which was really fun. And then we're how to advocate and get involved. How to look at local planning and see ourselves in the plan, in the process, and then also data and case-making resources, data and storytelling around our impact. And we're kind of crowdsourcing some of this in terms of what are models of arts and economic development? What are you already doing that actually translates into economic development? So this might be a resource for you. And if you know of projects that relate to locality development, developing the local place, or business development for arts and entrepreneurship, or models for the way that the work that you're doing is helping individual capacity building, my ability to thrive, be resilient, et cetera, learn skills. Those are, if they're different project models, you can view the project models that have been submitted, or you can add your own in terms of the submit. And same with reading lists, research, all that kind of stuff, if you've got time. And we'll be building this resource out for you. So, and then I think I was signed out. I don't want to take any more. I don't want to do. I think I can leave my slide off, and we can shift into the other part of the program. Any questions or thoughts or just kind of comments, thinking out loud from regional partnerships and projects? Okay, cool. Great. All right, then I think we can shift over to creative core listening. How would you like to handle that?
Hi everybody. I've got a very big challenge for you again. Because this is a listening session, we'd like it to be as intimate as possible. Can we gently suggest that you come and occupy the first row? If we just fabulous. I'll move my back.
Thank you.
Space here. That would be great.
I think we could also just move the chairs up.
Yeah, should we move the chairs up as well?
And everyone
It's so
second row's on
helpful.
the front row.
So maybe those, do you mind moving up? That would be just so lovely. And then we can see your faces. Great. Good job, Tracy.
Eliza, one
Yeah.
of our Shasta County Arts Council board members just came in, John Truitt. He's also the
John, I know
director
John.
for Viva Downtown.
Fantastic.
It's exciting to have John with us now. Yay.
Okay, here we go. So where's John? John. Hey, nice to see you. So let's see, this is up on the screen. This is the tiniest screen I've ever seen. But can you see it? It's all right, it's just getting.
There you go.
There we go. Wait, Laura, I challenge you to come and sit here. Come on. And what about you with the Jefferson band? It's been so sweet to have you
Come sit by me.
Yeah.
She is sweet though, I know that.
And then, good, I'd love to have you in the front row. Would you come, because you're a board member, yes. I love you, sorry.
Come sit by me.
Yeah.
See, next time you should bring prizes like chocolate bars.
Oh, I have to.
Brilliant, okay. I can see energy on right? Perfect. See what a great big bully I am. Tracy's so much nicer. Well, I just want to thank Shasta County Arts Council for letting us have the use of this gorgeous building. I just wish that the room was brimming, because the amount of information that's been shared today, it's kind of crazy, and it's like gold dust because it's filled with opportunity. So do you feel like connected with this world of opportunity that Tracy has and her team have shared with you today? A little bit? Because I'm sure that Nancy and Agatha, is Agatha here? Yes, Agatha, there you go. Between Agatha and Nancy, that they can always follow up with you. So if you have questions, because increasingly the role of county arts councils is to engage in advocacy. And one of the roles of Californians for the Arts is to help county arts agencies and the arts world in general learn about why that's important and how to practically get engaged, so that they in turn can then share with their communities how to mobilize easily in a sort of unfrightening way, but in a way that frightens everyone else into submission in order to gain public funding. So Californians for the Arts, you do such a great job. So experiences related to health are often determined by factors beyond the individual, such as environment, policy, or culture. The arts have a critical and accessible role to play in tackling community conditions. What do you think? Do you agree with that statement? Yeah, thank you. I am Eliza Tudor, Executive Director of Nevada County Arts Council. I'm part of a coalition of county arts councils across California and part of a small leadership team that encourages all of our arts agencies in terms of how to connect with each other, and our boards of directors and our communities are increasingly diverse communities across California. And I'm here today with two colleagues, Katrina and Gianna, and we've been going on a crazy tour, which we'll share with you a little bit more of in a moment. But we've been doing a little bit of a work analyzing some of the the information that we're learning about the 19 counties that are part of the upstate region. So more about that to come. We gave a very, very brief land acknowledgement at the beginning, and I kind of feel like I'd like to dwell on that a little bit. When we started doing our Upstate California listening tour, we used a map that we found under the auspices of UC Berkeley. So we assumed, well, if this map from UC Berkeley tells us that this is the definitive map of tribal lands, then it must be so. But the interesting part is that we've learnt that actually tribal lands are First Peoples. There are so many more tribes than we could possibly have known about that aren't mentioned here, and that these are more sort of linguistic, more sort of groupings of linguistic similarities and correlations. So I wanted to kind of acknowledge that. It's always very sensitive acknowledging tribal lands, because who are we to properly acknowledge that which we have all but exterminated? So I wanted to acknowledge, and I wondered, because I will probably fail to pronounce these correctly, is there anyone in the room, perhaps yourself, who would like to pronounce these for me properly? Could you tell us how we should? Is that roaming mic anywhere? Where did that roaming mic go? Lovely. Thanks, Nate. Would you mind? Yeah. Marvelous.
Just the list on this side. Yes, please. If you could just tell us how. So the first two are commonly referred to now as the Pit River tribe. That's the Achamawi and the Otsagawi. You can see it in the northeast corner. They're referred to collectively as the Pit River tribe. Then there's the Klamath, which goes into southern Oregon to Nome Lackey, Shasta, Wintu, Yahi, and Yana. And you might also see Wintu spelt differently, and you'll also see Wintun depending on which tribal group.
Fantastic. And right here, right now, what is the prevailing tribe that you would normally acknowledge?
Yeah, we're in Wintu country.
Wintu country.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Fun fact, the Wind River Casino is a conglomeration of Wintu and Pit River tribal names. And it kind of sounds funny too.
Yeah. But not funny, ha, just sort of curious and interesting, and something we should all know about, essentially. Thanks very much. That was really helpful. So the California Creative Corps, what is it? It's an economic and workforce recovery pilot program intended to fuel positivity, regain public trust, and inspire health and safety across California's diverse populations. It doesn't take much of a stretch of imagination to understand why now? We've just come through a global pandemic. Who's heard of the Works Progress Administration, or the WPA? Brilliant. And those who have heard of the WPA probably know that from the WPA came at least 4 distinct programs that put artists previously unemployed to work across America on some of the most extraordinary projects whose legacy endures today, artists across all disciplines. This program, the California Creative Corps, was a little inspired by that, and it's interesting that it comes on the heels of a global pandemic. And we know that the creative sector has endured but suffered. It's been devastated in areas of America, and it's no surprise that we would connect this with the idea of regaining public trust and inspiring health and safety across our diverse populations. So the WPA was formed on the heels of the Great Depression in the mid-1930s and endured all the way through to the mid-1940s and the Second World War. So the idea is, and this is where it gets really exciting, generally speaking, historically, California Arts Council has, when it spends down its, compared to other states, meager funds to support the arts and invest in the arts, usually these funds go towards organizations who then support artists. This is an opportunity beyond any other we've known that will put artists to work. Organizations, arts organizations, and social service organizations and units of government may apply to this, but they must state very clearly that they will be employing artists who will be at the forefront of creating campaigns to increase awareness around issues critical to society. That's pretty loaded, isn't it? That's like really serious. So what are these issues? We've been given some clues as an administering organization for the upstate region. We've been given some clues like let's increase public awareness around water and energy conservation, climate change and mitigation, and emergency preparedness, relief and recovery, and disaster response. And I've just put there including fire. Even driving into Reading. What was the highway that we took, Katrina? Was it 299? 299. Like, it's so obvious. I'm sure that you can take any white highway in or out of Reading and see the devastation of fire. Civic engagement, social justice and community engagement, and public health awareness. So, yeah, that's pretty weighty, isn't it? And I think that's why California Arts Council, as well as giving artists the opportunity to apply as individual artists and as groups of artists who have a vision and capacity to create their vision, have also opened it up in terms of eligibility to organizations that can help those artists build capacity. Sometimes an artist may have all the incredible, the artistic, the creative vision and capacity, but perhaps need a little help in determining the goals of the project over a longer period of time and understanding how to evaluate, what does success look like for me as an artist or for us as a group of artists. So sometimes working with social service organizations and community resource groups and units of government can be really helpful for the artists themselves. So you've looked at several maps today. This is the map of the California Creative Corps according to the State Agency for the Arts, California Arts Council. The yellow bit at the top is upstate California, clearly. These are the regions and the way they've been divvied up in terms of administering the funds, the close to $60 million that the state has given California Arts Council. So each of these regions has one and sometimes two, depending upon the population density, administering organizations. Nevada County Arts Council is the AO, the administering organization for the upstate region. And, that's a lot of ground to cover, and we'll talk about how we propose to cover that ground in a moment. And of course, here is the map of, we find it absolutely fascinating looking at maps, like cartography as poetry in a way, because it shows how communities relate to one another and regions relate to one another in different ways, and why we feel this is important that we understand the relationship between communities and regions for the California Creative Corps is that we hope it will inspire artists and community groups and civic agencies and units of government to work together in unusual ways that make sense for them. So we can work together as economic regions. We've just come from Eureka this morning, and the day before we were in Del Norte. We crossed over from Siskiyou from the night before. In fact, we got caught in some very serious snow and had to take an 8-hour detour, but I'll tell you about that later. It's a very adventurous thing. I'm just going to adapt this because I'm just like leaning down. How's that? Is that still good? Yes. Great. Okay. So then, of course, we have the map of linguistic tribal lands. Tribes know no county lines. So while our listening tour has taken us from county to county, those counties might have relationships beyond our political understanding of them. The map on the bottom in the middle is really curious and beautiful as well, and it connects with the idea of what happens when a drop of rain falls anywhere in the upstate region. Would you like to talk to that, Katrina?
Well, of
course, so if a drop of water was to fall, we're tracking where it would flow on out. Not only brings forward, a sense of awe and appreciation of the landscape, but most of all, it helps us understand how communities relate to each other. Because obviously, if there's an upstream part of the watershed, it's going to relate. There's going to be some collaboration potential with lower parts of watersheds. I was curious here in Shasta. Obviously, we're in the yellow zone here, which is anything that falls there will eventually go out the Sacramento River and out the Golden Gate if it's not diverted and taken off somewhere else. Anything in the red flows into the Great Basin, and anything in the green areas flows directly out into the ocean. I was curious with Shasta County, though. Are you entirely within the Sacramento River Basin, or are you partially in the Klamath Trinity to some of the county line cross? No, so it's probably right up to the watershed boundary. Okay, great. Sorry, I didn't get a chance to zoom in on that part of the map. So, but still, no matter what, you're certainly connected to the North Coast region through the diversions from the Trinity over to here. So it's a relationship looking at the relationships between your hydrologic boundaries.
Thanks, Katrina. So again, this slide was simply to show there are so many ways for an artist or groups of artists or artists in relation to community groups, units of government, social service organizations, of dreaming up projects that serve your communities in meaningful ways and in ways that only you understand. Of course, the map on the right shows how we've best understood the relationship of our travel route when we go between these 19 counties. And the only time we got it wrong was in the upper reaches of Siskiyou County, when the road wasn't closed and neither was it. The gate wasn't closed, so we thought it was okay to go through until the snow. I know. It was amazing. We should have included a slide about that. What was devastating, actually, we took some pictures. What was devastating was here we were on the top of this mountain, essentially, just south of the Oregon border. And the snow lay all about in brilliant sunshine. And it was very fresh snow because, the storms last week. And yet, silhouetted against the snow were the absolutely blackened, ashen skeletons of trees that had been completely destroyed with no hope of regrowth. And this, of course, is prevalent across the entire upstate region. So all this connects. It connects with the economy, with our health, with our well-being, with the arts. We've just come off a big project in Nevada County, which saw us, since 70% of our county is state and national forests, and running through those forests are, is the Bear and Yuba watersheds. This actually, the relationship between forests, their history, the way they've been managed for thousands of years, and most recently in the last 150 years, and how we propose managing them into the future, has a direct correlation between the air we breathe and the water we drink and our ecologies. And so we created an extraordinary project which has caught the attention of legislature, and that's what we're talking about. And in a way, this is a sort of tool for advocacy in itself. When units of government, when public works becomes connected with the arts, suddenly the role and value of the arts in our community begins to make sense. So this is a pilot program. All eyes are upon us. It's the only statewide program of its kind to be piloted in terms of workforce development and economic recovery. Let's see what we can do to create the most extraordinary case studies from Shasta. And let's see how those case studies might be replicated in other communities that are suffering from similar challenges and have similar opportunities to engage. So here we are, 19 counties in upstate. That's 374 census tracts, 31% of California's total geography, but only 4.2% of its population, and 3 primary watershed hydraulic regions. Every time I pass over that word hydraulic, I sort of have to look nervously at Katrina. Hydrologic. I have to look to my left, here we go, a scientist and a creative working together, right? This is exactly what Laurel was talking about, and it's what we all need to do, all of us working across sectors together to try and solve some of these issues that are common to us all. Incredible precipitations ranges, between 14 inches a year in Modoc, where we visited. It was one of the first counties we visited. More cows than people, I'm told. To 95 inches per year falling in parts of Del Norte. And then, of course, our elevation ranges from sea level to 14,000 at Mount Shasta. And a mixed economy of agriculture, timber, ocean fisheries, mining, tourism, and energy. You know all this, but we wanted to put together this sort of rather dry PowerPoint so that afterwards, when we share it with you, you will use these pages as little triggers, as clues around which to frame incredible projects in the arts. So in a way, we're kind of leaning in with narrative and data that can be used within your cases for support when we open up the proposals, the guidelines in the early part of next year. So how on earth are we get around the upstate region? We started with the idea of doing a listening tour and visiting every 19 counties. How many are we on today? Is it the 14th today? Yeah, I think it's around the 14th. And even though there are only 19 counties, I think we're going to do about 21 listening sessions, because there are some really obscure parts of counties that really need to be heard and can't necessarily get across this summit or this river system in order to meet us in the dark in another part of the county. So we're trying to be aware of that. What we want to do is listen to the degree that the input that you give as individual communities will impact the way we write our grant guidelines. We know that upstate California is different from every other region. There are things that we have in common with one another that are completely different from the South. And so we wanted to hear from you before we create our guidelines. One of the networks that we're using to do that is our county arts agencies. We are the state local partners with the California Arts Council. And in order to be a state local partner, we need to have a resolution passed by our county board of supervisors each year, making us essentially the most accountable arts agency in our county. All eyes are upon us, and it's a network of extraordinary agencies who are among the most self-aware, I would say, in California in terms of our understanding of how far we need to go to really, really support our diverse populations. So we're going to be looking at a new tool for evaluating the relative health of communities around California today. It's called the California Healthy Places Index. It was developed by the Public Health, I was going to say Public Arts Alliance, that would be no. It was the Public Health Alliance of Southern California. Don't be put off by the Southern California bit. States across the nation are beginning to pay attention to this extraordinary tool and use it in their own states. So Utah picked up on it a couple of weeks ago, we heard while we were in Mendocino. And I've talked to grant writers across the upstate region who are already using it to support their applications for different kinds of grants in the arts. So it gets interesting. I will say, please don't be put off with it. Please don't be put off by the amount of data. We know that what we are told are the markers for a healthy community may not tally with your own lived experiences in Shasta. And you might look at the data and you might say, well, hang on a second, we know that this area looks like this because of this, that, and the other, that the Healthy Places Index doesn't speak to. And that's why we want you to challenge us, and we want you to create projects and applications which challenge the data where you see that there's something to be challenged and change to be wrought. So looking at Shasta County, would you like to really quickly speak to this? And this is one of our sessions that is slightly shorter than the others, because normally we have about 2 hours for this. We're going to try and wrap it up in an hour, so we'll be really quick.
Well, and most of all, this is actually a tool for us, because as we're going into 19 counties, we're trying to understand the different resources, different resource groups that are available, the physical environment as well. So this really is a summary that that you know, but if we have something wrong, please do let us know. But understanding the different waterways helps us understand the different, ways, different parts, the census tracts that relate with each other and the different pieces there. The public land help us understand how much public versus private land often affects tax bases, the relative amount of taxes that come in. So some of the potential there. College and universities help us understand the educational indices you'll see in a little bit. Do people have to go far away to get to college? Can they do it nearby? Tribal lands as well, understanding what the resources within the communities are with that, and then specifically the county resource groups too, understanding what groups you could collaborate with, who might have more details on the data and what's already been tried or what you might build upon. So as I said, please give us feedback as well on this.
Thanks so much. And the community resource groups at the bottom of the slide are particularly interesting. You can see ones that you're very familiar with because you're partners together with your California Cultural District, Redding Cultural District. So immediately this tells you, that's an interesting place to begin. But again, there may be others. And what we'd like to do is share this presentation with you afterwards by email. And if you think we've missed any key resources out, which invariably we have, in Eureka, they gave us an entire page full of resources. It was hilarious. All these, again, are clues to how to wrap your head around putting together a great proposal. This is a California wildfire history map. And Katrina has circled where on the map Shasta roughly is. The small green regions go back about, when I think about it, do you think the blue or the green are the oldest? Yeah, I'm guessing it's the green, isn't it? And then we think that the pink is the more recent. So what are we seeing from this map? Yeah. And what's it showing us, this map? This map is showing us that fires are getting larger. They're much harder to control, and they're becoming more and more devastating. It's the most beautiful map to look at and the most terrifying map to look at, but it also shows us opportunity too. When we look into the California Healthy Places Index map, which we will in just a moment, there will be a place where for every single community that we look at, which we look at by tract by tract, and we'll explain why that is in a moment, you will be able to find the racial or ethnic makeup of that particular community. And again, this is a clue to how you might frame a project which creates meaning and can help prove conditions in that community. If you're an artist or an organization working together, we do ask you to look, we will ask you to show an awareness and acknowledgement of this, because there are such obvious correlations between a community's health and this. And you will be able to see for yourself. So it's absolutely fascinating. So today, though it may seem dry, we're giving you the tools to do this work yourself. As far as I know, we're the only one of 9 California Creative Core regions who are doing a listening tour. As far as I know, it may not be the case, but I haven't heard from among our fellow administering organizations that they're doing this quite yet. And it may be coming. We wanted to get ahead because our region is so diverse and so large.
And roads become quite impassable.
Exactly. Yes. I mean, we almost got caught out yesterday. So goodness knows what that would be like if we waited another month or two. So here we are, the Healthy Places Index, healthyplacesindex.org. We'll be giving you this link. This is what it looks like. When you look at that map, you can see 2 colors. You can see blue and green. There's dark blue, dark green, light green. And then there are some stripy areas that are known as exclusion zones. Those exclusion zones exist in part usually because the population is too small. I think the cap is 1,500, isn't it? 1,500. So if less than 1,500 people live in that particular zone, the California Healthy Places Index feels that it may be unreliable to draw conclusions, but that doesn't mean that you can't put together a grant application for a fabulous project based upon people's and community conditions in that exclusion zone if you yourselves know what's happening there, which you will, because you have lived experiences and these are your communities. And we're finding that wherever we go, folks are saying, oh, we know why that's an exclusion zone, et cetera, but it doesn't mean that those people really need help or whatever it is. So we challenge you there. So looking at that map, which color do you think denotes the best health outcomes? Green. Yeah. And why? More people? Green is a happy color. And what else? What other conclusions might you draw? Yeah. They're urban centers, aren't they? Metropolitan areas, high density population, more taxes coming in, more resources, more opportunities. Sometimes there might be that green area that stretches, you can't quite see it on this map, but there's a little pale green area that stretches all the way along the I-80 corridor up to Lake Tahoe. It's so fascinating, isn't it? So you get a high retail density, people living there, lots of communities going in. Fascinating. So what does upstate California look like? It's a lot of blue, isn't it? Those dark blue areas are what the Healthy Places Index described as communities within the lowest quartile of the Healthy Places Index. Those dark blue areas are the regions, the areas, the tracts that California Arts Council is challenging artists and you, social service organizations, units of government, to create amazing projects that create awareness for these conditions and perhaps a more positive future. And I believe that artists can do it. Do not let it weigh heavily upon your shoulders. Here's a closer look at the upstate regions. Would you like to speak to why census tracts? When you go onto the Healthy Places Index, the default, you can look at it by through extraordinary lenses, such as legislative lenses. You can look it up by, congressional districts, Senate districts, assembly districts. You can look at it by city, by county. The very clearest, best way, which is why the default falls to census, is through census tracts. But would you like to explain that a little, Katrina?
Well, the nutshell, a lot of the other ones that are trying to, if you're going to compare data over time and try to look where things have been and where they might be going again, this is a snapshot of the past. But to look for those trends, it's best to have something that's stable in terms of its boundaries. So census tracts generally do not change over time. They might change if population grows quite a bit. It might be divided into two, or if it decreases quite a bit combined. But otherwise, it's stable boundaries based on watersheds, based on roads. And so it just allows for that continuity.
Thanks, Katrina. And so here are the markers that the California Healthy Places Index has said these are the factors that determine a community's well-being, its health, its relative health. This is just a broad look at what Shasta looks like. So what you're looking for is where that small vertical black line slices through the dark blue. So you can see transportation's a real issue in Butte, in Shasta. Sorry, oh my God, I'm having cognitive dissonance. When were we in Butte? Remember, this is the 14th county. But use this. This will be absolutely fascinating for you. And when you have this PowerPoint, you can dive into it. Bear in mind, there are many census tracts in Shasta. And if you dive into any one of them, it will give you slightly different information about that's specific to those tracks. Do you want to speak to this, Katrina?
Let's just see if I can even read it on here for her. I think the biggest thing that stands out, now this is a generalization for the county as a whole, and given that there are so many tracts within this county, it's 48 total, it's worth knowing that then it's averaging all those tracts. So use that as a lens as you look at this. And we're going to look more specifically at a tract. But it does let you know within the county areas where the county might have to be scoring high relative to the tract, and thus there might be some other means with working within the county structure to help support that tract. Sometimes it actually parallels or can even be the worst tract we have found sometimes can even be worse than the county score. And that's simply because the data for the county is comparing to other counties in California. And the data for the tracts is comparing that tract to other tracts within California. Generally, overall, the scores were quite high for Shasta County. A very large range of per capita income, $18,000 from a tract around the Shasta Lake area, the town of Shasta Lake. And those notes are all mine trying to figure out the geography, by the way. So if I have it wrong, please let me know that too. And 51,000, the highest in this Texas Spring Roads area, which I wasn't familiar with. The lowest scores by the county are summarized there. And again, this is just sort of a glimpse for you to look at and see again for indicators of what are some of these areas, what are some of the topics we might want to look at. We're going to dive in closer in just a bit with a specific tract. Also looking at the overall population for Native Americans and for Latinos with the general county numbers as well as the maximums. And I've noted which tracts have each there.
Normally, when we do these listening sessions, we go into a little bit more depth. But again, we know you've had a wonderful overdose of information this afternoon. So we're trying to kind of whiz through it and just give you the overview and all the clues that you can then burrow into later by yourselves. So what we did was we asked our designer to do an overlay of county lines to census tracts. And this gives you a sense. So if you look at Shasta, you can see an incredible variety. You can see pale blue. I think there's some gorgeous dark green, which is a good thing, in the middle of or outside Reading. I think it was. We'll go in and have a look at it in a moment. But you also see a swathe of dark blue, which isn't looking great. And you would know the reason for that. But this, again, is a clue for you to collectively look at these dark blue areas and think, what are the reasons? How can I use the Healthy Places Index to kind of burrow into and create narrative from some of this, and then create some amazing projects around it from through which artists will be funded. And you also see some light green areas too that are looking kind of more hopeful. Wherever you see light green, there's a reason they're not dark green. So you want to kind of go into those areas. If there, for example, if there is an artist or a group of artists who are passionate about a particular area and it's not quite dark green, it's light green, there will be something pulling it down in terms of the relative health of that community, and you'll want to be looking at what that is. So let's go into, I'm going to end this show and I'm going to go directly into the Healthy Places Index, and we're going to take a look around Shasta. Let's see, hopefully good, yay, great. So here we go. Yeah, I had it open, I'm so organized. So at the moment, we're looking directly at Reading. What I'm going to do is I'm going to zoom out a little bit to give you the Shasta perspective. Then we're going to zoom back in on where we are now. But just tell me, where are we now? Literally right now, where are we on this map? What color are we in? We're in the dark blue. Does this surprise you? No? In this particular area of town, it doesn't surprise you. So, well, why don't we start here? Should we start here? Why don't we? Katrina, do you want to look at this? I'm going to click on this. So what you do is you click on that tract, that dark blue bit, and immediately to the left-hand side, the community conditions that tell you what are those things that are defining that area come up.
Well, this is in fact the lowest scoring tract for all of Shasta County, the one that has the lowest overall score of all the indices. So thus, that's helpful for us to just start here and see and try to understand what's going on. What really surprises me about this one is, I'm sorry, as I'm gonna have to, I'm so used to my touchpad. See, I'm so used to, I got spoiled by it and then these funky mouse people. Okay, here we go. I know. So please. But as we start first with sorry. Change is good. I know, it keeps us like it goes to those other parts of our brain. I got it. Anyway, so this tract is at the 3.7 percentile. That basically means that relative to other tracts in California, there are 3.7 that have a lower score. 3.7% of tracts have a lower score. So do 100 minus 3.7. As well, so 96.3, right? Did I get that right? Percent of tracts actually score higher than this one. So just getting that relative sense. So did I do the math wrong? Well, and we've been to a lot of places that have had some conditions, but the thing that is very different from what we've seen in a lot of other counties is the difference between this tract and the rest of the county. 50 percentile, we've been going to a lot of dark blue areas in California lately. So it's like, what's going on that makes it so different than the rest of the county? So let's look at some of those things. Let's start with economic. And within each of these, you can come down and you'll have areas. I'm not going to put any agenda of any indice on you. You'll have areas that you already might have ideas of people you might work with or projects or what feels even addressable. So I'm going to just show you how to use this tool, and then you get to have fun and follow what you're thinking about with it. But with the economic, we can see right away it's dark blue for all three of the economic indices: above poverty, employed, and per capita income. Let's go ahead and open employed since it has such a low score. Let's see how that compares with the county. The employment levels for this tract are at the 0.6 percentile. The county's at 39.3 percentile, so it's quite different. So you can look at this, and if you're interested in understanding more of why this metric even matters, you get the information here as well, telling you about what the indicator measures. It's the people aged 25 to 64 with a job. It describes as well how this is connected to health. So instead of reading this through for interested time, I'm flagging that for you. But if this was something as well that you were interested across the board with others, I can go right back out. I can hold this. I can actually go to other tracts, and I'm going to come back to this one, and I can see how other tracts compare for that exact indice. It stays right on that indice, and I can look. So I can look at something quite nearby and try to understand, well, this is right next to here. What's going on that's making that different? But let's come back. Is there anything else you see as we're back in this tract? I know for me, when I was seeing what else really stood out relative to the county, in terms of education, I was curious why. You'll see it's quite different here relative to the county. We have that score from before, but you can't see it right here. But I can tell you overall for education, the county was at 46.4 percentile, and this tracks at the 8 percentile. So again, quite different. Preschool enrollment was quite different. This is at the 2.5 percentile. But if you look at for the county's at 51.8. So what's something that might be going on? And we can go further in this discussion, but for now, I'm just wanting to flag how to use this tool most of all. Is there anything else as we go down that you're particularly interested in these indicators? Social is about voting and census reporting. Transportation has transportation things. Neighborhood, I'm just going to flag overall. Neighborhood gets buoyed quite a bit, raised quite a bit in its scores based on tree canopy in the area. We have, lots of trees. We, of course, have some thoughts maybe about tree canopy because you might have too many trees in some areas, and that's what's creating these really hot fires. So we're going to give some feedback about our thoughts for how this applies for rural communities. But I think I wanted to open up one thing about this tract that probably is no surprise to you, but we have not seen many elements with clean environment that have scored low in the upstate region. And the diesel particulate matter, obviously this is an area that's being highly impacted by traffic coming through. That affects young lungs, all lungs. Let's understand a little bit about that. What might be done? What kind of awareness? As Eliza says so beautifully, what could artists do to help improve conditions around this issue? Anything else you want me to open up here, Halcyon? Are you curious? Looks like here, very low home ownership. Again, I'm curious as I look at that, what does that compare with home ownership for the county? 62.5 percentile. So very different. The home ownership in this tract is 11.9 percentile. Does this make sense on this tool generally, how you can use it? And I don't know how our time is, but if you can direct Eliza, she's great at driving this too, if you'd like to see another track.
Thanks so much, Katrina. You're the best. When I look at this area and when I see Shasta Arts Council, the state local partner for Shasta, right in the middle of this blue area, right? It makes me think we have a California Cultural District right here. It's you, it's here. Maybe one of your partners for the California Cultural District, for Redding Cultural District, might propose some sort of project that's actually, harnessing some of this dearth of health. You might consider it. I mean, it's not often that you see this, as Katrina says, right in the middle of an otherwise sort of relatively healthy area. I just want to zoom out very quickly at these dark blue areas here. This is still Shasta here. This is still Shasta here. So just be paying attention to the regional opportunities, that the knowledge that this map gives you. When we were in Butte County, it was fascinating and awful to see. There was someone from Paradise who represented a coalition of several arts organizations who was with us, who was working hard on the campaign to regrow Paradise and community health through art. And the blue tract basically followed the edges of the canyon through which the fire, careered. It's heartbreaking to see. So there's so much work to be done, and instantly you can see the role that arts can play. Similarly, we drove through Greenville between Plumas and Lassen County, which burnt down less than a year ago, wasn't it? Less than a year. And, you're talking about a town that's been similarly leveled. It's devastated, apart from a few buildings, such as the school, thankfully. So what we found in the middle of Greenville, without intentionally seeking it out, was the regrowth of a new community hub, which was basically a collection of oddball trailers that had been plastered with public art and the most gorgeous gardens, and kind of really hip and really cool. There was a trailer that was selling burgers, and people were naturally coming to this little kind of almost like a village green, as we would say, a community hub. And these individuals were basically redefining community, redefining how they felt that Greenville should be rezoned and should regrow. Such a sort of story of resilience. Gianna, you have that video on your phone. We interviewed this amazing artist who just happened to be there when we were driving through this devastated area, who spoke to us a little bit. So we'll be sharing all this. We've created a website which is developing by the day. We've created a Facebook page. We're a little bit behind posting for the last couple of counties that we've been. That will be updated in the next couple of days. So you'll see our post about you. And we'll post that video there too. So I think that's given you enough of an idea of how to use the Healthy Places Index. Just to say, I know Katrina went into this, but I'm just going to again show you how to burrow down and capture copy or narrative that will be helpful in your application. So let's click on that. You see where it says low income homeowner, severe housing cost burden. If you click on that little black arrow there, it will open it up, tell you how it compares to the rest of the county and the rest of the state. And then it'll tell you the why. What is the connection of health to this? All residents should be able to afford adequate housing without giving up healthy food, medical care, or other necessities, or accepting unsafe housing conditions. High housing costs and housing instability associated with increased stress and depression, communicable diseases like tuberculosis, and decreased children's well-being and educational outcomes. It's shocking, and this piece of copy here, if you as a creative community could create a project around which awareness sprung that could somehow dial in solutions for the future, this would be so strong, so powerful. So we encourage you to think like that. So I'm going to go back now quickly because we want to open it up to you. And let's click here. There we go. And then I'm going to zoom back along here to where we were. And here we go. Da, da, da. Right. Okay. So what are some of the factors? This is a listening tour. This is a listening session. What you share with us now will help inform the guidelines that we create through which you apply for funding. So some of the factors that might determine how much a county or region will be apportioned. Well, if you divide up the close to 3.4 million, which is how much we have for the upstate region to go into the pockets of artists and organizations working with artists, it would be about 170 or 180,000 per county. So we could do it like that. That would certainly be easiest for us. But how about we also look at the county density of blue areas or health outcomes? How about we look at county population, its geographic size, its tribal and ethnic considerations and composition? We will be looking at racial and cultural equity within this picture. We already know it matters, and we encourage you to as well. We'll be, of course, regardless of anything, be looking at the overall proposal strength. We're going to be looking at the likelihood that your proposal will turn into a project that can become a case study that California as a state can be proud of, that communities across the other side of America or elsewhere in the world could use it. How replicable is it? Be thinking about this as artists. How will I know if my project is successful? How am I going to document it? So that we can shine a light on it, shine a light on you, and for it to be used elsewhere. And then again, this is a regional opportunity. Very often grants are available restricted to counties. This is the reason we show you maps of watersheds and transport routes and the relative proximity of communities to one another and economic regions. And social determinants for you to then tell us, well, for us, it makes sense that we follow this watershed or the way that fire spreads in our region, or where we know the homeless live and the routes that they come in on. But so you will know best, and that's why it's important we hear from you now. So the other thing that we'd like to ask of you is, what is a meaningful size grant? Should we create, in large part, a lot of smaller grants to which artists can apply for and through which we'll develop capacity for those artists? Maybe you want us to create grants for residencies between artists and organizations. Maybe there are empty storefronts that they can inhabit for a year and be paid to create something of beauty and innovation in. Maybe there are partnerships between organizations and groups of artists that require greater funding. What is that sweet spot? You tell us. If you can't think of it because I'm putting you on the spot right now, don't worry. You just need to let Nancy or Agatha know, give your feedback later, and then Nancy and Agatha can feed back to us. We will be funding cross-county regional size grants as well. And we're going to be looking at, how big do those grants need to be? What are the smallest and the biggest kinds of grants that will make have real meaning for your region? So I'd like to kind of turn it to you. Because we're a small group, which is great, I don't think we need to divide into groups, but let's hear some of your ideas. What's your thinking when you look at this, and are any of you inspired? And what we'll do is we'll use the mic. Nancy, thank you. You were nodding at me a lot. Pass the mic to that guy there. It'd be great to get the camera on you too. Please.
My name is Carlo Henry. And
Actually, if you could speak a little bit better into the mic. Yeah, great, because we want to capture you and you're being live streamed.
All right. My name is Carlo Henry, and I'm the founder of the Art Hunger. What we do is the Art Hunger is a project that collaborates with organizations, businesses in town to support and nurture the local artist community. And what I see here is what we're so aware, what we've been aware of for 2 or 3 years, that there's not a lot of economic support to local artists, emerging artists. And that's what we've been doing and dealing with since we started. So this is great that there's going to be opportunity to get funding to keep supporting local artists and to create something.
Did you say you were on the board of directors for Shasta County Arts Council?
Yes, I'm the vice president.
So you are in such trouble.
Yes, I am.
We expect you to be dreaming up things. So our county arts agencies across the 19 counties will sort of be like mini consultants for us. Instead of us, Nevada County Arts Council, determining who should be funding in your communities, it will be you. So Nancy and Agatha will be looking at how to develop a peer review panel, and Shasta Arts Council will be on that panel. We will be on that panel, but also a couple of community members too. So we'll have to work out a process together. So although Shasta Arts Council won't per se be responsible for putting together any applications because it will be a conflict of interest, Shasta Arts Council will be deeply encouraging awareness for this opportunity and all its cross-sector opportunities and the innovation it might afford and the relief it might bring. So I hope that you'll be having conversations at the board level and then disseminating that out, bringing your community back together, have Zoom calls together, have special interest groups meet with other sectors as well. I'm really excited. You're in such trouble.
I would really, it would be so exciting that an SLP in a county, right, a state and local partner would have the opportunity to re-grant. Agatha and I have talked a lot about when we've had funds that have been given to us to re-grant. We feel we have a much more impactful opportunity at that level to be able to take money and push it out into our artists, both organizations and individuals in the community. And it's just like a school block grant. When you get a chunk of money that's given to a local district to disseminate amongst their programs in a school, it makes such a difference rather than to put a constraint on it and say it can only be done for this little portion of something. Mm-hmm. So I would encourage that all of the SLPs have that opportunity to put themselves in a position of re-granting out to their own communities, because I think I look at that map and think about where that's centered, and it is downtown. But I also know that that map doesn't represent what is going on downtown for us. There's a lot of, there are not a lot of family units in the area, but there's a lot of new housing development that's going. The redevelopment of downtown isn't representative of that map. And so those of us in this room know what strides we've made, what huge strides we've made over the last 10 years in the downtown area. So to be able to take the lead in that in terms of our own community and putting it out there, I think it's going to benefit the community in a much larger capacity, because we know where the money needs to go. Carla's absolutely right. We know where the money needs to go, and we would love the opportunity to be a part of that decision-making process.
Absolutely, and that's where the state local partner, you, Nancy, as Shasta Arts Council, being on one of the consultants for this project, you already are. And the fact that you'll be running the peer review panel for your community. The only thing California Arts Council is very specific about is that it's the administering organization actually writing the checks. Absolutely. So you, in many ways, in a sort of high-level way, it is almost like re-granting, because we're placing you responsible. We're issuing you with a delicious challenge because you know your communities. And the only thing you don't need to do is write the checks. But you're very much responsible. So this is a wonderful opportunity. And I think you wanted to speak to.
Well, mine's more of a testimony. My name's Melody Revnick. It just sounds so deep here. Anyways, fairly new to Redding. I'm a photographer, have been most of my life. Came from a very rich state for the arts. And coming into Redding was kind of hard as an artist when you first move in. What Carlo's done with Art Hunger has been just fabulous. He brought a lot of vigor and art into downtown area, and just now getting involved with the Art Council. And it's pretty exciting what they're doing here in Redding in the arts, and very encouraging as an artist. That's it.
I'm excited too, and hope that Carlo will go away and start thinking. I can feel that he's already plotting.
I'm ready to take him out for a beer and
exactly. Go for it, girl.
No, but he's made just a huge impact here.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay, you are hereby challenged, Carlo. Yeah. Anyone else? Anyone who hasn't spoken? Great. And if you could say your name and any affiliation as well, it's helpful.
My name is Brandon Bauman, and I own Reading Performing Arts Center. So I'm not a nonprofit or a for-business entity. Nancy's been doing a ton of work with Shasta Arts Council, and we have a theater coalition that gets together monthly and meets, and which has been really awesome, and loving seeing the theaters come together and working as in a collaborative way. It's been really beautiful. But I think an area that my background's in music education, and a music teacher. And I think one thing as putting on local theater that I find challenging is collaborating with musicians, because just like if we wanted to do a live performance, being able to have the funding to pay for live pit musicians, once you get, all your licensing costs covered. And if you have a small venue, you can only sell so many tickets. And so I think finding some ways that we can provide space for musicians and have money set aside to be able to pay those musicians, just because sometimes in like a musical theater budget, it's not there to have live musicians. And then we have the option of our tracks.
What was your name again?
Brandon Bauman.
How do you? Brandon.
Yeah.
Sorry.
It's okay.
Brandon, so now what you need to do is go one step further with your thinking, because you've determined your need. Now you need to marry that need with something you see in the Healthy Places Index, and then create a case for support around it, and be thinking all the time, how can this project gather speed and draw attention from the community that's very positive in such a way that, for example, the McConnell Foundation would want to come in and fund it at the end of the grant activity period. I know you have an incredible foundation here. It's been so generous. But be thinking like that. What are the other community resources, the resource groups? The McConnell Foundation was just one of them, that you can harness to perhaps create a little bit more sustainability for that once they've seen the amazing job that you're going to do within the grant activity period of this particular grant. In terms of what that period looks like, we'll open up in February or March next year, and then we'll run through the whole thing finishes for us at the end of September 2024. So it'll be a little over a year, and that will include time to properly evaluate and create the amazing case studies we'd like to share back with the state when they evaluate us as an administering organization. The overall aim is to do such a great job in Shasta and in the other counties that the state will have everything, the California Arts Council will have everything it needs to report back to the state in order that this is no longer a pilot program, but it happens every year. Imagine that, it's amazing. And then remember the surf regions as well. How can we keep that ongoing dialogue with them? And the more and more we work across sectors, the better. So be thinking that. So now you are hereby challenged. Anyone else? Any other sort of weird, fabulous questions, projects coming to mind? Just like say it. And then hold it up so we can capture you for the...
Okay. I wonder if you could speak...
You could say your name one more time.
My name is Sky Schofield. I'm a documentary filmmaker. I work for KIXE, local PBS station. I'm curious if in your work or anyone else in the room, if you'd have some words or advice in working in communities that may not know how much the arts is good for them in their lives, and how to maybe broach that topic, open that door. Historically, not having as much art present here in the North State, I think people may not know what art that they like, or that the arts would enrich their lives. Mm-hmm. I was wondering if you can speak to that at all, and if you've experienced that elsewhere too.
Oh, yes. I mean, there are communities all over the world whose desperate housing situation, their food scarcity, whatever it is, whatever condition is happening, have been uplifted in some way over time by the introduction of art. Often it's just accessibility. Is there a particular community you have in mind? Is it okay to share that just as an example so we can sort of think about it together?
I guess there's been as much as there's been an anti-intellectual sort of sentimentality across this country over the last couple decades. I personally believe there's an already established avoidance towards the creative music and art. A good example would be several different live music venues being set up within my lifetime within the Reading area, and them being shut down for what might be seen as reasons that are not adequate to shut down a business. There's an aversion to music and arts and culture, I think, in this area. Somewhat. I don't want to cast aspersions or anything, but yeah, I feel like there's an anti-cultural sentiment in maybe more rural regions in California. I can only speak from experience.
I have a feeling you're talking from a political perspective, aren't you, in a way? I mean, I know that as an arts council, we're very, very strict about being apolitical and trying to create friendships and bridges across political lines. It's like one of the most important roles we can play rather than adopting a stance. And this is particularly important in advocacy. And we know that across party lines, have been different periods in history where every party has been supportive of the arts, and that's what we need to aim for. But I think to encourage you to look a little bit more deeply, look at the Healthy Places Index, find an area that you can relate to that is showing really poor health outcomes. And instead of thinking of necessarily bricks and mortar type projects that have or haven't succeeded in the past, think about how to provide access to what it is that you love and know, and how to bring that in a way that revitalizes and creates pride of place. During the WPA area, an example in the visual arts would have been the extraordinary number of murals that went up in places that were desperately poor, and then how, in working in those areas, visual artists created informal community spaces where the population there could practice art, sometimes for the first time, and how that caught on and how that drew attention from other sectors. in such a way that investments were made and revitalization began to occur. So sort of think along those lines. You are a documentary artist. Much of the work of the WPA, those artists, was about documenting narratives, documenting stories. Go forth and share the stories of those areas that you care about. And then maybe think about collaborating with other artists or going it alone. But you are hereby challenged.
I think our job as artists is to be on the vanguard and really show people what they really need in their lives, the options that we can share with the community. I hear you. Like it's challenging to bring people, to really make them participate in what we're doing. And maybe it's based in education or experience, but it is our job to keep doing the things we do and we love, to share with the community what we as in the community do ourselves as artists.
I love that you say that. It suddenly made me remember this amazing little program that that Yuba Sutter Arts and Culture, which is Nancy's equivalent it's the only bi-county Arts Council in California. And for a brief time, I was the interim executive director post-recession. And my job in 2015 was to reopen those doors. And an annual event that we had, it was such fun and so cheesy. We would invite local leadership in government departments, for example, like the police chief, and then, some county administrator, and then, upstanding citizens in other areas of community life who you would never imagine participating in creative life. We'd invite them to an event once a year in which they invited all their friends who similarly weren't necessarily connected to the creative ecology. And that individual they were asked to compete. They had like half an hour to create the most amazing picture of the same thing. And it was hilarious and beautiful and fun. And what we found over time, what the agency found over time, was that those individuals who we so need to appreciate what we do developed their own evaluation because they had been drawn in and they were past the point of no return. They had so much fun. They suddenly got engaged. So that was just a very sweet example of how something got caught on in an otherwise an area where the arts were not thriving.
I just had a comment inspired by your question, and in terms of being visible, being valued, those kind of things. You know what we learned with COVID when the governor's office issued reopening guidelines for each industry, like under these conditions and this level of transmission and all that kind of stuff, your business has to have these safety protocols in place to open. The creative sector was not in any of the reopening guidelines, including film and television. And so sometimes we're so ubiquitous, we're so everywhere, right? We're in education, we're in nonprofits, we're in for-profits, that we're invisible. And so just stepping up and going, whoa, wait a minute. And the California Public Health and the governor's office created a task force, and we created guidelines, things like that. But it was a real big wake-up call for all of us in the field of like, wow, we have a visibility issue. So you're speaking to that. And some local strategies are even just inviting council members to your events. I know that we're also talking about project-based, generating ideas and inspiration for projects and to propose and things like that. But you can be doing that work while advocating as well, which is I did a project, produced an arts and prosperity candidates forum for a city council election in Ventura County. And I asked all of the candidates, what are your top 3 issues that you want to address in your tenure if you're elected? And they submitted theirs, and I got like a dozen artists together. And within about 15 minutes, the artists generated 56 solutions. And then we delivered them to them in like a hip hop poem kind of thing. I think they got it. But at any rate, that coming, even strategizing in your project development with the census tract and things like that, and reaching out to a council member, or that kind of offering partnership or offering creative solutions might be a way to double up on the advocacy visibility issue, as well as get your project funded. So
I think that we are rural communities rural communities are faced with, as you guys have, I'm sure if you don't know, you've discovered in your travels, that rural communities are not just faced with BIPOC issues, but we're faced with poverty issues. And I think the poverty issue could be connected to the arts in such a basic way that when you have an educational system that basically puts the arts last on the docket, you're not educating children from the very time they're, starting their lives to understand and appreciate the arts. So I'm encouraged that Prop 28 was passed. I think that's going to help a lot. I think all of these different initiatives, all these different programs and opportunities have an incredible thread running through them that connect. And I appreciate all of you for connecting the dots and making this work. I as a young educator, I remember when the Californians for the Arts was just starting, I don't know how long it's been out there, but it seems like I was, 23 when I remember the advocacy part of this started. And it has traveled so far and so vastly in this big state. So I applaud all of that. I know that the threads are connected. They're connected in terms of all the advocacy and all of the generated programs, but the threads are connecting in our rural communities specific to poverty and the arts and health, et cetera. So that will be an interesting thing for us to digest and create. Thank you.
And I will lastly just say, keep thinking of correlations. Use this map. Don't be afraid of it. And I encourage the board of directors and also your partners to be thinking in the next few months how you can guide these conversations that need to happen. So I encourage the board of directors at Shasta County Arts Council to become experts in the Healthy Places Index, just enough that you can put to bed any fear or sort of righteous indignation around the data you are understanding versus lived experiences. Keep bringing it back to your lived experiences and what projects you can encourage community organizations and artists to create. Here on the screen are upstatecaliforniacore.org. It's changing as the days pass. We have a Facebook group. Instagram is coming. That's the Healthy Places Index. And then Shasta Arts Council, and there's an email address at the bottom. It's info@Upstate Creative Corps, spelt CORPS, as in Army of Artists, .org. That's info@UpstateCreativeCorps.org. We're always available to you. Thank you so much. Go forth and create. Oh goodness, I don't want to forget you.
No,
yes.
That's okay. I just wanted to say, this whole day I've been kind of feeling like the outcast here because I'm more the cultural side than the artist side, being the director at the Historical Society. But something that Sky was talking about really rang home with me about how our organization could participate in these types of projects as well.
Yes.
We're about history, and my view of history is everything has a history, and if we have to tell the story of some of these organizations or businesses, if we have to talk about the history of a particular, avenue of art or something like that, don't just consider working with historical organizations, because we can, although we have to do it from a historical perspective, we can add light to why things are the way they are. And, one of my viewpoints is that we need to be connecting the past to the present and the future. So we need to take the past and figure out, what caused things to happen and how it can have an impact on people today for the positive.
History is profoundly important and doesn't have to be fusty and musty. It's great fun, especially when we relate it to the future. And so your organization is going to be the most amazing tool for that. Don't sit back and wait for artists to come to you. Go out and start looking for artists. Don't think about just visual artists, although visual artists are great. Think about the digital arts, digital media, film, technology. Think about the literary artists, theater, musicians, and start having conversations and start generating interest around what you know to be of value.
Thank you so much for coming today, all of you. It's been a wonderful afternoon. We do have a little wine that we're going to be putting out, and a musician. We encourage you to hang out and talk to these lovely ladies and just, hang out. I know Michaela also has, if you're interested in getting tickets to Hamlet, we do have a coupon that will give you 20% off to go see Hamlet at the Axiom tonight. And she'll be doing that as well.
One last thing, we'd love to have a photograph. And I'm going to suggest that we gather at the back of the room with the black curtain over there. Or actually, because the light's on the stage, how about we gather just here?
Yeah.
So if you could all stand and gather, and we'll cozy up, and then